subject. Oh, that'd be different.
From where? From where? Which one? There we go.
Totally different subject.
You thought he was eavesdropping, and you're like, that's awesome.
I know who
I
you're
thought that was
talking about.
hysterical.
I'm like,
All right. Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the Common Council meeting for Tuesday, February 12th. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Can we have a roll call, please?
Alderman Strelchuk,
Here?
Alderman Bushy,
Here.
Alderman Meyer,
Here.
Alderman Worth,
Here.
Alderman Garrell,
Here.
Alderman Brian Schneider,
Here.
Alderman Kathleen Schneider, here, Alderman Nurbin,
Here.
Mayor Abendroth.
Here. We have a quorum, and the first item is public hearings. We have two. First one is ordinance 1537, an ordinance amending Chapter 58 of the zoning code to rezone the property at 4828 West Angus Bay Road from B3 and floodway and flood fringe to neighborhood commercial with a PUD planned unit development with floodway and flood fringe, and amending the city's land use plan map from residential to neighborhood commercial. The first reading was at the Common Council in January, and this rezoning and land use change was denied by the Planning Commission in January, but it is scheduled for a public hearing, so we need a motion.
Move to go into public hearing?
Second.
Motion and second to go into public hearing. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
We are now in public hearing. Does anyone wish to address the council on ordinance 1537? Please come up to the microphone, please.
Hello, Cheryl Bregstad, 4320 West Fox Run. Okay. I'm actually representing the River Lake subdivision and the surrounding neighbors who initially signed the letter of intent supporting the rezoning of the property at 4828 West Angus Bay Road to residential as recommended initially by the planning staff. After numerous discussions these past few months and with all the involved in the interest of the fairness to Mr. Lesage and consideration of all the other parties, we proposed maintaining his current B3 status at last month's Planning Committee meeting. The current B3 designation addresses our concerns at this point as neighbors, and Mr. Lesage is in agreement with this decision. At that time, the Planning Committee voted unanimously in favor of the B3 zoning, and we continue to support that zoning. If, by chance, the Common Council does not agree with the Planning Committee and decides to move in a different direction, we would like to then have the opportunity to speak again on our behalf. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Bregstad. Anyone else wish to speak on this issue? Mr. Lesage?
I just wanted to, Jeremy Lesage, 4828 West Angus Bay Road. I just wanted to echo what Cheryl had said, and that we're all in agreement with the B3 zoning and just leaving it as it is for this time. And I appreciate the Common Council as well as the Planning Commission for hearing our concerns on this issue. So we're just in agreement with the B3.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lesage. Anyone else wish to be heard on this item? A motion to close public.
Move to close public hearing?
Second.
Motion and a second to close the public hearing. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Public hearing is closed. Second public hearing is for ordinance 1538, an ordinance amending the PUD ordinance 1512 for the properties located at 6209 West Mequon Road and 11050, 11127, and 11124 North Industrial Drive to increase the number of single-family dwellings from 21 to 23 as part of the mixed-use development. This was recommended by the Planning Commission in December, and the first reading was at the Common Council in January.
Move to go into public hearing?
Second.
Motion second to go into public hearing. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
We are now in public hearing. Does anyone wish to address the council on ordinance 1538? Seeing none.
Move to close.
Second?
Motion second to close the public hearing. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Public hearing is now closed. Next item is personal appearances. Any citizen wishing to address the council on any item not on our agenda tonight may do so at this time. Does anyone wish to address the council on any item not on our agenda? Seeing none, we will move on to public officials' comments. I have one comment. We've had a lot of cold, stormy weather lately. This has resulted in the closure of federal, state, county, and local governments, school districts, the post office, the garbage man. Through all this, though, the city of Mequon has remained open. So a big thank you to our dedicated employees for keeping the lights on. Good job, Mr. City Administrator.
Thank you, Mayor, and members of the council. In light of tonight's substantial agenda, I do not have a report, but I'm going to cede my 2 minutes to the city clerk, who has a timely announcement regarding our upcoming election.
Thank you. Just a quick reminder that we have a primary election next week for Circuit Court and for the City of Mequon Mayor, and that will be February 19th, and the polls are open from 7 a.m. until 8 p.m. In-person absentee voting is going on right now in the clerk's department and will continue through this Friday at 5 p.m. If you have any questions about your polling location or what's on your ballot, look up the clerk's department on the website or email.
Thank you, Carolyn. Next item we have is the consent agenda. Bear with me, there's a lot of stuff on here. It includes the Common Council minutes of January, Architectural Board minutes of December, Board of Appeal minutes of November, Board of Police and Fire Commission minutes of September and October, Economic Development Board minutes of November, Festivals Committee minutes of November, Finance Personnel Committee minutes of December, Fire Department report for December and January, Planning Commission minutes of December, Public Welfare Committee minutes of December, Public Works Committee minutes of December. Includes the following resolutions. Resolution 3581, approving a certified survey map for the property located at 11124 North Industrial Drive and 6209 West Mequon Road in connection with the dedication of public right-of-way along Industrial Drive. This was recommended by the Planning Commission in January. Resolution 3582, approving a certified survey map for the property located at 11150 North Industrial Drive and the parcel directly to the north in connection with the dedication of the public right-of-way along Industrial Drive. This was also recommended by the Planning Commission in December. Resolution 3583, approving a certified survey map for the dedication of public right-of-way along North Green Bay Road. This was recommended by the Planning Commission in January. This property is on the east side of Green Bay Road, north of Highland Road. Resolution 3584, approving a development agreement for the Riverland Estates subdivision consisting of 13 single-family lots located at the northwest corner of Bonnewell and Riverland Roads. This was recommended by the Planning Commission in December. Resolution 3585, approving the renewal application with Bird City, Wisconsin, and to observe International Migratory Bird Day in conjunction with Arbor Day. Recommendation forthcoming from Public Welfare Committee.
Public Welfare Committee took up Resolution 3585 and unanimously approved, so we recommend approval.
And Resolution 3586, designating Mequon as a B City, B City, USA. Recommendation forthcoming from Public Welfare.
Public Welfare also took up Resolution 3586 and unanimously approved. We recommend approval.
Thank you. And Resolution 3587, granting an easement to AT&T at the Public Safety Building, 1300 North Buntrock Avenue. Recommendation forthcoming by the Public Works Committee.
That was approved 3-0.
Thank you.
Recommended.
We also have ordinance first readings. The first readings of ordinances will not be acted upon unless a suspension of the rules is approved by a recorded vote of 2/3 majority of all the aldermen. These are the first readings. Ordinance 1539, amending Chapter 58 of the zoning code to rezone the property located at 10950 and 10922 North Cedarburg Road from B3 office to R6 residential plex to allow for 6 condominiums and amending the land use plan map from office to residential plex. This was recommended by the Planning Commission in September. It is a first reading. Ordinance 1540, an ordinance amending Chapter 58 of the zoning code to allow specialty trade contractors and building service providers as permitted uses in the B5 Industrial Zoning District. This was recommended by the Planning Commission in January. It is a first reading. Looking for a motion to approve the consent agenda. Motion,
Motion?
Second.
motion and a second to approve the consent agenda.
I'd
Is there
like-
any discussion?
I'd like to remove item O, please.
Item what?
Item O, Resolution 3584.
Item O. Okay. Anyone else? All right, so we're voting on everything except item O. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The consent agenda minus item O is adopted. Item O.
I'd like to make a motion to approve item O, Resolution 3584. One thing I did not see, and I may have missed, Jack can highlight on this, is that the developer verbally, or the developer's representative verbally agreed to increase the size of the detention ponds by 10% over the capacity that were specified. I'd like to make sure that that's a condition with my motion. Again, the developer did agree to this in the meeting prior, so this is nothing new to the developer or staff hearing this the first time. So if we can get a second, we can just approve this as well.
Second.
Motion and a second to add that to the developer's agreement.
Yes.
Mr. John.
And
Okay.
approval.
Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Item O is adopted.
Thank you.
Alderman Bushy.
I would like to suspend the rules and take up Resolution 3576. That's in the back page, packet page 287, Section G.
Resolution 3576.
Yes.
Okay, we have a motion to suspend the rules. Carolyn, call the roll.
Do we have a second?
Do we have a second to that?
I'll second.
Second. Call the roll.
Alderman Strelchak?
Aye.
Alderman Bushy?
Aye.
Alderman Meyer?
Aye.
Alderman Worth?
Aye.
Alderman Garrell?
Aye.
Alderman Brian Schneider?
Aye.
Alderman Kathleen Schneider?
Aye.
Alderman Urban?
Aye.
8-0, and the rules are suspended. We are now taking up Resolution 3576. This is a resolution authorizing the payment of a claim by Mike and Joanne D. Robertus for tree damage on the property located at 3330 West Mequon Road in the amount of $10,000, recommended by Public Works Committee in December, tabled by the Common Council in January.
I move to approve.
We need a motion to remove from the table.
Move to remove it from the table.
Second.
Motion second to remove from the table. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? This item is now before us.
Now I'd like to move to approve.
We have a motion to approve.
Second.
And a second to approve. Any discussion? Alderman Worth.
Don't we have insurance that both defends us and covers this, and shouldn't that be the appropriate forum for resolving this claim rather than making a determination where we've got conflicting facts? It's kind of an open issue, and I don't know that I certainly, from reading this, know enough to make a determination whether things were done correctly.
Is that a question for me or just
Well,
a
I guess.
statement?
I mean, we do have insurance. I don't really know that there's a question.
Can Ryan explain the background of what you've dealt with in the last?
I actually just want an answer to that question if we can get it.
Sure. So in short, the answer is yes, there is insurance that exists for this. And if the claim was denied, as I've indicated in the memo that went to all of you in the packet, if it was denied and litigation would then ensue, they would be, we would tender that claim to the insurance company and they would provide the defense. There is no deductible on this particular policy, so whatever the insurance company ended up paying would be what they'd pay. It is, in essence, at that point, totally up to the insurance company as to whether, how they deal with it, whether they would litigate it completely, if they would look to settle it in some way, however they would deal with it would really be up to them.
So we're being asked to contribute some amount of money that we've already purchased insurance to cover.
In short, yes.
Okay.
Assuming we did something
Well, yeah, but
that's insurable.
assuming
Alderman
they were wrong.
Schneider, you had your hand up. Do you want to say anything?
Well, I think the offer from the insurance company to cover a portion of the claim, I think that, I mean, that leaves us with the $3,800 balance to make a decision as council whether we would approve that or not. I think, in a matter of fairness, I think that everybody should be open-minded to thinking about that option. I don't necessarily know that going to court is a reasonable outcome based on the fact that Mr. DeBertis came in with an amount that is more than fair based off the estimates that he provided. The estimates that were provided are more than double what he is asking for. I think the portion that we would have to cover after insurance makes this an issue that I feel should be supported.
In order for the insurance company to be involved, someone has to file a claim. Am I correct?
Correct, that would be the point, that they would be involved. Although if we paid a claim, we would, in essence, submit our payment as the claim to the insurance company.
File a claim doesn't mean you have to file a lawsuit, right?
No, we would file if we paid monies out.
No, but if we denied the claim tonight, they wouldn't have to file a lawsuit for the insurance company to take over and negotiate with the claimant, would they? They'd make a
In many
demand on the insurance
cases,
company and-
in many cases, you're correct, although in this case, I would suspect, based on the insurance company's statements thus far, their position probably wouldn't change. They've reviewed the claim, they've valued it, and I would be surprised if they didn't then require litigation to do. I mean, they're not in the business of just volunteering money, so I would be surprised if they did that. But certainly, a claim just could be made and then turned over to the insurance company. But I don't know that that would get anywhere. I would anticipate litigation would be the next step here. And
could we get a clear summary of what transpired? I mean, there's kind of multiple memos. There's the gentleman's rendition of what happened.
Sure.
What's the city's position on what really happened?
Sure. And
Simple
Director
as that.
Lundin can jump in and correct any errors that I may have here. But in short, the city, as part of its regular maintenance program, was trimming trees along the right-of-way on Mequon Road. In this particular case, the city's forester had identified that trimming the trees to the extent that they needed to be trimmed based on how far they overhung into the right-of-way would not be attractive and may in fact be somewhat harmful to the tree. That was highlighted to the property owner, and from there what took place depends on who you believe. The city's position based on city staff is that the property owner was told this is what we could do, which is to say we'll cut the trees all the way around up to a height of a certain height so that it looks arguably attractive, and it at least wouldn't be as bad as it otherwise would look by virtue of what we would do. And the city indicates that the property owner said, yes, that's fine, go ahead. The property owner says that that did not happen, that he was not explained that this is the extent that those trees were going to be cut, and accordingly has filed the claim based on that.
And if they had just trimmed the trees to cover the right-of-way, are we talking about knocking off 2 inches or 2 feet of the limbs? I mean, what is the amount of trimming
That I
that
don't
would have
recall.
happened without the property owner's permission?
This is committee work.
What?
This is committee work.
But we're being asked to vote on something. It's good to
Something that
have
we
the
don't have
facts.
information on.
It's all in the, they're just repeating what's in the file.
It was approximately 18 inches, which was the only remaining live portion of the branch.
It was a diseased tree. the bottom part of the branches where, if you have a large evergreen, the bottom starts to die out and you only get green on the end where it gets sun and it all dies underneath. So we would have cut the remaining green part off, exposing all the brown, scrubby under portion of the tree. So the forester made the offer to clean all that up and trim it up to the point where the branches were healthy again. And unfortunate side effect was you can see clear through to Mequon Road now, which was undesirable to the resident. But
Alderman Schneider.
I just have two comments. I mean, this disease, that fungal disease that this tree has, is something that we have had as well, and it sometimes is a little bit invisible because it does attack from inside out, so you may look at the tree externally and think it looks all right, but it is progressive. It is something you need to treat every year if you don't want it to progress, and once those once the needles have fallen, they're gone. There's no treatment available. So this is a tree that had that problem, not an uncommon problem. And I don't see the city being at fault for this issue. My other concern about the varying ways this has been described is it seems as though the city staff, and correct me if I'm wrong, had said we'll bring the tree up to the levels of the trees that the property owner had trimmed up that far on the other side of the driveway, which is a pretty clear visual, if that in fact happened, of how far the trimming was going to occur, how far up it was going to be, because it was matching trees that had already been trimmed on that property. So that's why I'm just wondering how this miscommunication occurred, if there was a visual mark that this is how much we're trimming and the property owner agreed. So I'm not seeing that the city really is at fault here.
the picture of that is on packet page 299, if anyone wants to look at it.
Alderman Bushy.
I'd like to give a little bit more, fill in some of the details in addition to what Brian had to say. Going back, the trimming happened in July. There was an email sent in between. The mayor asked me, actually as representative, to talk with the DeRobertises. And so I went out there. I read the materials, and everything did seem pretty clear-cut here as far as the issues went. So I went out there several times in all to look at the trees, talk to Mr. DeRobertis, subsequent conversations. I appreciate the staff coming out. And then looking at the picture, I was trying to put myself in the place of the DeRobertises. And I know I'm one block off of Mequon Road. I can hear the traffic and the like. There's residents who call me about the traffic on Mequon Road, shaking dishes. I don't have a true appreciation of what's going on there. And again, going out there, talking to them, having the conversations in the driveway, and yes, it is pretty stark to see the differences from what we see there. As a matter of fact, you can go onto Google History even, and you can see the changes. Even on the east side of the driveway, there's changes. So I don't know who did there's cutting at one level, and then when you look a year later, the height is higher up. I don't know who did that. One of the things that, he came in here with a request. He put together the items, included a fence even. We then subsequently, our attorney suggested, not to get into the details, select a monetary amount. That's how we derived the monetary amount based on the only estimates that we had, which seemed very conservative from a local place that gave him estimates for the trees, removals, etc. Now, I'd like to say here, as far as what the discussion is, we have a whole document here, a binder full of stuff that is legal documents protecting the city with all the dealings that we do with contractors, and that's what we vote on every night that we're here. That we don't have that with the residents, with some of the issues, that we conduct with them, the interactions. In this case, there's no documentation. There wasn't a prior notice to give him the option of trimming the tree himself. There's no pictures before or after. And so there's nothing even similar to these legal agreements. And one of the things that's coming out of this is a change in our policies as to how we approach similar situations, which is a very positive outcome, although through a very difficult situation here. So as I look at this, that and it's not setting blame or anything, it's just this is a result of what happened. There is good intent, I think, on some parts, for sure, with helping, but I don't know how this actually occurred, what was said, or what the sentiment feelings were at the time of having city officials come out. So, in my opinion, I think it would be good to wrap this up here and now. We've learned a lesson as to how some of these interactions should happen in the future. Compensation as designated in the amount here, I think should go forward, and hopefully we'll not face a similar situation in the future.
Alderman Meyer?
One of the things that concerns me with paying this is starting to put the city in a situation where we're determining winners and losers on it. And one of the reasons why you have an insurance company to do that is to cover you in some of these instances. I haven't really come across many of these except for the time that I've been here that we've actually paid out to somebody. We've already referred that to our insurance company, referred that stuff to our attorney to handle that for us. And I don't want to see and just by, Alderman Bushy bringing up the fact I really don't know what was happening during the time, there was no pictures and no stuff like that, kind of puts us in that position of determining whether or not who said this or who didn't say that. And that's why, I'm going to vote to deny this, and then hopefully that our insurance company will take care of this situation for us on it. It's the same thing as slipping and falling on a sidewalk for us. I mean, we take that over to our insurance company for it, and I think we're setting a precedent by just doing a payout to a resident on it.
Alderman Strelchak?
I really think that the issue on this matter should be taken up as a legislative issue, and we're, a legislative body, we're a governing body. So, was there negligence on this? Is the city responsible on this? And in reading the attorney's memo, we've got a lot of discussion here on how it happened and what the committee recommended, but are we negligent? As we look at this, I don't even think we should go into the aesthetics. I think we can all agree that if these were our trees and they were trimmed that high, we probably wouldn't like them. I think the discussion on whether the trees were diseased or not, they were trees on a resident's property. I think we should take that out of the factor as well. Was the city negligent in doing this, or was the city not negligent in doing this? In reviewing whether or not we should have been paying on this, I've mentioned a couple times, but probably wasn't loud enough with my recommendation, that we should really sincerely look at the Asplund policy on trimming trees in the right-of-way with the utilities and things like that. And if you've driven down the road after Asplund's come through, I mean, there can be half of a tree literally hollowed out. It looks hideous. There's nothing I hate looking at more driving down the road. I mean, there's so many other ways they could have cut it that would have been more pleasing to me driving by and me if I lived in that home. Again, now we're getting into the personal side of this, and again, I feel for the constituent. This is this is an important issue to their home. It's an important issue to the fact that their enjoyment of living in their home within the city of Mequon, and we need to be conscientious of this. But we do have an insurance policy in place. If there is negligence, there is coverage there. If I do vote to deny it, and I'm still listening, by the way, I haven't made up my decision. If I do vote to deny it, I would hope that the insurance company would pay it if they feel that the city was negligent. I would like to see him get some sort of a compensation, but I don't think it's right to put it on a burden on the rest of the taxpayers for us to decide whether we feel aesthetically this looks okay or if we would like it in our homes or not. This is a legislative decision, and we really need to be factual and black and white with this. So, again, I'm listening, but I've just kind of highlighted a couple points that I'm using as decision-making tools on this item.
Alderman Worth?
Well, I've kind of gone back and forth on this. Frankly, I don't think it looks bad, but I do understand why they would want that cover for Mequon Road. I think the trees look fine. I think as a city, we have an obligation to be careful in not, it's great to be a friendly people and do things on a handshake, but at the end of the day, the tie probably should go to our taxpayers and our residents. And yeah, we have insurance for it. If this was much more money than we're talking about, I'd say send it to the insurance company. But on the other hand, I think we need to have a better policy that we don't go out and start cutting stuff on people's properties without having something in writing from them, at least signing off. And I'm torn, but I think I'm going to vote for the resolution to resolve it because, yeah, there's an insurance company, but insurance companies are such pleasant people to deal with in the first place, and we're asking a lot from a resident over something that we could have prevented by making sure that we covered ourselves as a city. But I'm still torn.
Alderman Schneider?
I completely agree about the policy, and I think, like Glenn said, I think they've gone back and now they've reviewed that policy and they're going to be acting on these issues in a different manner. But I think if we want to bring up policy, I think we have to go back, I believe it was 2014, when we cut some wildflowers down on Ned Timurak's property. And I believe this council, and I believe it might not have been the whole council, it might have been just you, Mayor, that authorized the payment of $1,000 to that resident for replacement of those wildflowers. So I think that, we've had some issues in the past that's been done. And so I think I agree with John. I think this is a learning lesson, and I think sometimes you pay a little bit of money to learn some lessons sometimes, and I think we got a lot out of it, and I think we should authorize the payment.
Alderman Irvin?
I'll correct the facts on the reference to the Timurak property. The city went in and mowed his property because he failed to maintain the property on Mequon Road that he bought, ignored repeated orders to mow his property, so we came in and mowed it for him. In the process of that, we cut down his wildflowers, and this body did not approve that claim. That was approved by the former city administrator without consulting council, and I gave him a lot of heat for it, but the money was already paid out. This body never considered that. That's what happened there. This is a little different. We are doing work in our right-of-way, which we are legally obligated to be able to do without any notice. It's our right-of-way. It's documented on everyone's property file with the county. I voted against this in committee because $10,000 is just too much. We're being asked to pay for removal of these mature trees that are already diseased. Our biggest mistake here is we performed free tree care for the resident because we didn't think it'd look good the way we were going to clean it up. In committee, I was more of the opinion that a couple grand for some arborvitae to fill in the blank spots would be something I could wrap my head around, but $10,000 is a bad deal for the Mequon taxpayer. We have insurance to cover this. I guess I'm still in the mindset to deny. Really, all you need is some ground cover. We don't need to cut down mature trees that are the landowner's expense and put up a fence. It's just not good for the rest of Mequon taxpayers to foot the bill.
Alderman Garrow?
I think the amount was $3,800 because the insurance company was going to do the other $6,200. I was in on the Personnel and Finance Committee when they paid the Ned Timurak fine, and it was said that, and we never know who exactly approved it, but it was said that the city administrator approved it, but it still sets a precedent. I know I would be angry if somebody came on my property without my permission and cut down something. I don't think they had permission at that point in time, but let's drop that. I saw these trees. I went out and saw these trees, and to me, I have the same kind of trees on my property. Yeah, some of them get green, on the ends are green, and some of the closer the trees are dead. It's not going to kill the tree. But if you cut the tree wrong, you can kill it. When that sap comes out, you cut it the wrong time of the year, it can kill the tree. I thought it looked pretty bad when I went out there and looked at it. $10,000 isn't the issue. There should be, and there should have been in the first place, because I've had things happen on my property with the city before I became an alderman. Same kind of stuff where one said one thing, one said another, and I know I told the truth, at that time. So sometimes the truth doesn't lie somewhere in the middle. But I know I told the truth at that time, and when I see that what happened to this gentleman, it just reminds me of what happened to myself and my family. And for somebody has to pay taxes, and they're forced to pay taxes, and they have their trees cut that way. I'm going to vote to pay this. And we can spend, $12 million on a TIF district or $1.5 million on a piece of property that was worth $500,000, but we can't pay this gentleman $3,800, and you're telling him to go to court? Oh, go to court. Go spend your time up there and sue us. That's BS. I'm voting for it, and anybody who votes against it just has no empathy for the residents of this city.
Mr. Worth, I'd like to make a comment, if you take the gavel for a second.
Sure.
I spoke to the city forester about this. This happened in June. They were trimming trees, and they went and talked to the resident and said, if you've heard the story, you've read the reports. The tree trimming was done professionally. It was done with mutual agreement of the homeowner. Mutual agreement of the homeowner. So spending any amount of city money on this is unjustified. This is our money. This is the taxpayers' money. Our city staff is professional. They did nothing wrong. They did what the homeowner agreed that they should do. So those are my comments. Thank you. Alderman Strelchak.
I'd just like to highlight for discussion's sake, as we vote on this, the amount is for $10,000, not the insurance claim amount less. So either the motion needs to be changed to a lower dollar amount, or we will be voting on $10,000 as the motion was made today.
Call the vote.
Alderman Bushy.
Just a couple quick comments based on what I heard. A couple quick things is that the De Robertuses are residents of our tax base here. They've been so for 40 years. And so I think they're included in that whole picture as well as taxpayers. Second, I did ask somebody who I know as a landscaper to go out, take a look at the trees. I didn't give them any way that I wanted him to talk or anything, and I asked him what he thought about how the trees looked, etc. From his opinion and looking at it, that he would not be able to determine that the trees, otherwise look healthy and could last for a number of years. He couldn't say. He can't say how long they're going to last, but he couldn't see large evidence of disease. And so, now with the fate of those trees, after being cut in the middle of July at 90 degrees, and to that extent, that can have an impact on their lifespan.
Call the vote.
Call the question. We have a motion and a second to approve Resolution 3576. Call the roll.
Alderman Bushy?
Aye.
Alderman Meyer?
No.
Alderman Worth?
No.
Alderman Garrow?
Aye.
Alderman Brian Schneider?
Aye.
Alderman Kathleen Schneider?
No.
Alderman Urban?
No.
Alderman Strelchak?
No.
3 ayes, 5 noes.
5-3, motion fails, or 3-5, motion fails. So we now go back.
Mr. Mayor, this is one of those weird ones where just the motion itself, I mean, usually you would say a motion fails. I think we would need to follow this up with a motion to deny that claim formally, just from a statutory perspective.
We denied the resolution authorizing payment of a claim.
But you need to deny the claim so they can proceed with making a claim.
But we don't have that on our agenda.
It's still the same subject matter.
It's the same subject.
Okay, hit me with a motion.
I'd make a motion to deny with a recommendation that city staff work with the resident and insurance as a liaison to see what they can gain for a claim on this.
I'll second that.
Okay, motion and a second to deny the claim.
But to direct staff to
Yeah,
try to reach
to
an
direct the
agreement.
staff is the important part that I wanted to have in that inclusion. Otherwise, I wouldn't have made the motion.
Right. The effectiveness of it is denial of the claim.
Yes, sir.
Alderman Bushy.
Can you, asking Brian, please further explain the impact of this?
So by statute, when a claim is filed, the city has 120 days to respond to that claim. If we respond to that claim either by paying the claim, which point it's just done, or if we deny the claim, it has certain impacts. The impacts really are nothing more than it just limits the time frame within which potential litigation could be brought.
It also starts the time frame. They couldn't bring a claim without
Right.
denied.
A, it starts the timeline for them, and then B, it sets a limit that they have. If we don't act and we just let it expire after the 120 days, what the statute says is that's when you then can bring your lawsuit, but you're not limited to that shortened time period within which you could do it. It could be up to whatever the regular statute of limitations for that particular claim would be. So you're talking the difference between 6 months versus, I think this would be a 3-year statute of limitations without going back and looking at the statute. So that's the difference. From a policy perspective, at least, the concern that we have is that if we don't deny it, there's provisions within all insurance policies that we otherwise generally cooperate in the handling of the claim. If we got a claim that was filed after the fact, after that 6-month period, I've never seen an insurance company do it, but I've had some threaten that they're just not going to pay the claim because we should have denied it and shortened that time period for them. We should have cooperated with them under the policy. As I say, they've never actually done that, but they've made the argument. So that's why we would seek to make that denial happen, just to protect the city long term.
Alderman Meyer.
Question. So if the insurance company now comes in and determines the $6,000-something that they figure that that they'll pay on this, can the resident come back to us and then submit another request for the difference of those dollars and the $6,000?
I don't see why not. Whether or not you'd want to pay it at that time would be another policy decision that would be done.
But they
But I
do
think
have that
legally
option
you
at that
probably
time.
could.
Alderman Worth.
Well, there's another reason for denying the claim, and you gave the city's reason, but if you're sitting on the other side of the table, what a lot of communities do is let the whole 120 days run out, which simply hamstrings the resident from being able to do anything or pursue it, and they have to sit there and wait. So if you're not going to pay the claim, the fair thing to the resident to do is to actually deny it, so they've got their full legal rights. Other than that, they don't have any under the statute. And so there is a positive reason, if you're not, from the resident standpoint, if you're not going to settle, to deny, because other than that, they've got to sit and wait. They can't file a lawsuit. And it's frustrating to somebody bringing a claim against a municipality.
It is also true, yes.
And there's no good reason for a community to do that, but a lot of them do it.
Okay,
By the way, most communities deny all claims and never address them.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Call the roll.
Alderman Meyer,
Aye.
Alderman Worth,
Aye.
Alderman Garrow,
Aye.
Alderman Brian Schneider,
Aye.
Alderman Kathleen Schneider,
Aye.
Alderman Nurbin,
Aye.
Alderman Stralchuk,
Aye.
Alderman Bushy.
Aye.
That's unanimous. The claim is denied. Moving back to number 6 on our agenda, specified miscellaneous new business in which the council may take action. First item, confirmation under 58-88(d) of our code of a conditional use grant to allow for waivers to district standards for Associated Bank located at 11223 North Port Washington Road. This is, we're asking the council to confirm the conditional use grant. The conditional use grant that was granted to Associated Bank was to allow for waivers to setbacks and offsets for the site plan. Jack, you want
Want
to summarize
summary? Sure.
that quickly?
So on January 14th, the Planning Commission approved the conditional use grant for the project. This is somewhat of a unique case where the use of a financial institution is permitted in the zoning district. The conditional use grant was requested due to waivers being requested to the code, which is allowable under 58-295E18, since the property is a legal non-conforming lot size. The Planning Commission approved waivers for open space ratio, building setback, building south side yard offset, minimum parking setback, and minimum parking offset to the south. The waivers were granted because of the smaller lot size, as well as this building is basically will be located between the Starbucks building and the PNC building. So the applicant wanted to bring the building up a little bit closer to the road. Our typical setback off the road is 65 feet. The request was for 15 feet. I believe the Planning Commission pushed that back to 25 feet. The PNC building is roughly about 10 feet off the property, and the Starbucks is pretty much in line with the approved setback for this structure. There's also a memo in the packet from the city attorney with regard to the Common Council's authority over the conditional use grant versus things of the Planning Commission's purview, such as building and site plan and architecture. Thank you.
Alderman Meyer.
Just a little clarification, you keep saying Starbucks, and it's not really Starbucks, basically it's their own building that's next to them.
It's a multi-tenant building, but Starbucks is the main tenant. Just use that as an identifier.
What about the Associated Bank that's there now, and then you got the vacant property that's next to the PNC, correct?
Right. This,
So what they're developing is that vacant property.
Correct.
And then they have the Associated Bank, the Starbucks is way down from there.
Well, the Associated Bank is Bank Mutual's, it's part of Bank Mutual. So once the new building is constructed, Bank Mutual will tear down the existing bank. So when the Planning Commission looked at the application, they wanted it somewhat in line with that Starbucks building so that it wasn't set way back behind between the Starbucks and the PNC. When the other vacant lot gets developed, I'm assuming they'll be requesting a waiver to that front yard setback as well to stay within that same line.
You wanna go first?
I asked to have it be brought up just for concerns on a couple things. One, there's literally every waiver that's been given on this to allow this facility to go in here, including south side setbacks and things like that. Being part of the Planning Commission, I was there the night that this was discussed. I appreciate a couple things. One, that the drive-through was relocated to the rear. A couple things didn't get into the approval as formal motions that the applicant did agree to verbally that night. One was that there would be no advertising or graphics displayed within the tower element, which is near the road. I think, given the fact that the setback is being given as a variance, I think just the line of sight and things like that could be compromised if graphics were put into that tower element. So, I'd like to make a formal recommendation that, if this does get approved tonight and confirmed that that addition gets added back in, it was something that was verbally agreed to by the team that's here tonight previously, and then we just would need to reconfirm that tonight. I struggle with the setbacks on this property, just knowing what DOT came forward with the plans to expand Port Washington Road with the I-43 interchange as one of the options. Putting another building closer to the road with that DOT interchange expansion would put us at risk of even having that setback be minimized even further if an extra lane was placed there. And my general concern would be, for public safety with that regard. The tower element is a glass element. That is also the thing where people will be going up and down stairs if they choose to. There's obviously an elevator in the building, but if that road does ever get shifted, that glass element I just don't feel would be safe to the people in the building if a vehicle went off track, icy roads like we have tonight. So I had a couple concerns with that. I just wanted to discuss it with council just to see what the pulse was here to make sure either we're on the same page or not, and then make a recommendation moving forward.
Alderman Durbin. So I see in staff's report, they recommend denial of the sign waiver, which I believe is for the sign inside the glass tower, correct?
The sign was discussed, the motion was a denial for the sign within the glass element. What was left was the green band. Again, we can't discuss aesthetics of that. I would have preferred to see that removed at the night, and I can't discuss that tonight. And then also, no other graphics. So what's happened with these tower elements throughout different communities is that people are using the tower element as a way to, whether you have the sign element at the top, you could put posters or advertising in there, either illuminated or not at night. And I just feel that at this location, that would be very distracting to traffic as you're coming forward, going to that busy intersection. So I just want to make sure that for a safety standpoint that that's out.
So maybe a point of clarification with our city attorney. I guess I don't have, this is a troubled site because it's small. It's infill amongst a bunch of other commercial uses. It's the kind of thing we like to fill in. So we should want to try and bend over backwards as much as we reasonably can to fill these kind of sites in so they don't go somewhere else and sprawl. What other elements of this, there are lighting concerns that we're able to bring up? Because I don't know if this was talked about at Plan Commission, but I think the green band at the top is lit and illuminated.
Right.
If it's consistent with other areas I've seen it, just doing a quick Google search, is that regulated under the conditional use when it can be lit? I mean,
No, that's not really an issue. Again, the conditional use grant in this case was specifically due to the waivers being requested and the lot size being non-conforming. I think our code is somewhat unique, and it is somewhat flexible for a lot of these infill sites. We do allow businesses to ask for waivers, and in the packet there is examples of other sites, especially along Port Washington Road. Some of the old sites that have been redeveloped over the years have taken advantage of the waivers. We don't typically allow them for anything that's, gets close to the actual minimum requirements. So in this case, it's a fairly small lot size, so that was one of the reasons the Planning Commission was supportive of the waivers. In addition, I have the plan up there. You can kind of see the building location in context with the PNC building. This building would have to be pushed back another basically 40 feet to meet that code requirement, and I think the commission felt that that would be too far back and kind of get lost back there. And I know the applicant had a concern of visibility as well, having that building that far back off the corner. So yes, we are rather flexible, and I think that has helped us redevelop a number of the smaller infill sites that are listed in the report.
Alderman Bushy?
From what Brian had detailed in his note here, looking at the economic impact, and Kim can correct me if I'm wrong, but looking at this, it appears to me economically you're replacing one building that has property taxes of about $5,000 with another one that's going to go up, that's going to have an annual property tax of about $44,000.
You can't tie the two together. They're two separate properties. It's a vacant land.
Right, but this is just the building component.
Oh, okay.
So then what that also does is conversely frees up approximately a 1 2/3 acre property by having this new bank on a 1 acre property. So then the 1.67 can be developed. So it seems like a significant positive economic impact. And so that's one of the components that I looked at from our packet.
Alderman Meyer?
First, let me say that I think that Associated Bank are good corporate citizens. Nothing that I say or anything of that is reflection on the bank itself, or even if I happen to mention PNC, it's the same thing. There's no reflection on that. It's just a reflection on the development. We had a lot of comments on the PNC Bank when it went up. Not a lot of good ones that I had received on it. Too close to the road. Just a great big architecturally, didn't look that good. And this is kind of a situation here where I'm taking a look at that. I'm not saying you're taking advantage of us. I'm saying that you're taking advantage of, the being under the size of the lot that is acceptable inside of our area. So granted some variances inside that. I still fully think that the PNC was a mistake on that, to have it that close to the road in that area. I think allowing this to be this close to the road is also a mistake again on it. What we're having now is, in that area, even though there are only 2 stories, and then we have a tower inside of it, it's a towering building that should actually be set back to the road a little bit more. As we all know, when you have a taller building, it's set farther back from the road, doesn't have as much impact on it, doesn't give you as much enclosed feeling inside it if you're driving or that. I do have some concerns too also on the configuration wide, when they do start discussing again widening that intersection on it. I do think that if we're going to allow to have that, we should, as close as we can, stick to the district regulations that we have on it and push that building back as far as it can. Just because we made a mistake once with the first PNC bank doesn't mean that we should do it again on the second one. And that doesn't mean also the fact because we allowed somebody to do it, we have to allow somebody else to do it too. So, I'm not in favor of, I'm in favor of you guys having a building. I'm not in favor of that close to the road. I don't think we should have that variance on it. And also, I think that's a perfect opportunity inside here for you guys maybe to combine the 2 properties inside there. I know it's probably, you figure it's a little more economically feasible if you do one in a smaller piece of property and then you can have something a little bit larger on the other one for it, for offices or whatever that you want to do inside of it. But I think that we need to adhere closer to our standards on it, our district regulations on it, and get that building moved farther back off the road.
Alderman Schneider.
I look at this a little differently because not only the PNC building being back 10 feet, but Starbucks being a similar range to what we're looking at here, which would be 15 feet. I don't think it's a great look to have a seesaw look where there's 2 buildings up front here and then there's one pushed way back, not to mention the fact there's not much room to push it way back. I think it aesthetically looks better to keep things more aligned, generally speaking. I mean, not exactly, but generally speaking. And when we look back at our packet and all the other properties on Port Road that have a similar setback, 65 feet just in this location might look like an outlier of a building. And that's really our only issue we're looking at. We can't speak to the tower, we can't speak to the green color, yes or no, because that's not the question before us. All we're looking at is whether we can accept the variance with regard to the pushback to the away from the road and the other. And the one in the rear, I do feel that the bank did concede to have their drive-through on the back, and that's probably one of the reasons perhaps that the back is a little close. And I know that the city staff pushed that pretty hard. And so for my estimation, I think it's reasonable to have it 15 feet back. It's 25 rather. Yeah, so it's in line with the other buildings, generally speaking. So that's it.
I would also add that at 65 is the code requirement if there's no parking in front of the building, but pushing it back 65, my guess is you're going to have to put some parking in the front of it because I don't think there'll be enough behind it. That and the setback actually goes to 95. So you could end up with a building at 95 feet off with parking in front.
Well, let me make it clear. I said adhere stricter to the standards inside of it. It didn't mean we had to go all the way back to the 65 feet on that. I think it should be pushed back farther than what it is right now, but I don't intend that it has to be 65 feet back when the other one's right up in front inside of there.
I think as we analyze this plan, we've pulled from the best of everything that's going on around. Sorry,
Alderman Giro.
Yeah, I'll be quiet and wait my turn.
Thank you for recognizing me.
You're welcome, sir.
Like everybody else up here, and probably, in my opinion, probably 95% of the people in the city, that most people don't like that PNC Bank over there on the corner, 10 feet off of there, and it was actually, it didn't fit with the neighborhood at all. You know, it just did not fit with the neighborhood at all, and one time I wrote a piece that reminded me of the word on the face of the principal in the movie of Uncle Buck. It just stuck out. It just stuck out like that. And we shouldn't be up here picking winners and losers. And this is a case where if we wouldn't, you know, if we give you different rules, you know, we would be picking winners and losers. They approved that bank. They approved that bank. I think it was a big mistake for the city, and I think there's nothing you can ever do about it again. I think your bank looks fine. I don't agree that it's going to connect. You know, if we expand the road over there, that you're 25 feet off is going to affect that much, because you just go down the road and there's one 10 feet off. So you just get a bottleneck at the intersection. How do you fix that? You can't fix it. You're going to add to the tax base, which I really like. You're not asking for any TIF money. You're not in a TIF district. There's a lot of banks around. I don't know, probably about 20 within a half a mile of there, but you guys are businessmen, and I'm sort of in the banking industry and the financial industry, so I know how you make your money. You'll make money. You'll prosper. I don't see a reason, you know, you went through a lot of things. You're setting back. Again, I agree with Alderman Kathleen Schneider that they should be, you know, more in line. You shouldn't have to go way back. So, looking at, I haven't had any of my constituents complain about it. Maybe most of them, you know, aren't aware. And right now, though, with your glass building and the like, you're actually, you know, you are sort of in character with the neighborhood, because right next to you is a bank that has the same types of glass building and the like. I think your bank is going to look a little prettier, and it's not going to be an eyesore with sticking out like that. But those are my feelings on it, and I'm going to sit back and listen to the rest of the aldermen.
Let me make one clarification. There are no plans to widen Port Washington Road. That came up as an item of discussion with the DOT. If we did not agree to a Highland Road interchange, there was the possibility that they would have to widen that intersection. But we have an agreement with the DOT regarding the Highland Road interchange.
Currently, yes.
They may never build it, but we have an agreement with them, so they're not going to be widening Port Washington Road. Anybody else?
We don't think they will.
Alderman Strelchak.
We don't think they will, but it was in one of the original plans, and because the widening or the reconstruction of I-43 has been pushed back, if it does come up again, I got a feeling some of those traffic studies and things like that will be reconsidered just in general. So I'm just trying to be reasonable and forward-thinking in this, that I just don't want to see, if that road does get expanded, the DOT coming forward with eminent domain and trying to take the front portion of that parcel. I just want to make sure that building's back far enough that PNC Bank is going to have troubles. So if that happens.
So it's mobile.
But now we're going to agree to put a second building there when we've seen a plan come forward as a recommendation from the DOT. If we didn't do something, the DOT can change their mind just as easily as they made it. Now we have agreement for the Highland Road interchange, and we've got a dollar amount for that. But if they come back in 5 years and they do a new traffic study and they re-review some of these things and they feel that intersection needs to be expanded, I don't feel that the applicant would be immune to that road being widened. And I'm also highlighting the fact that what we're doing is we're taking the best parts of everything that the applicant wants out of the neighboring properties. We got a 10-foot setback on the corner at PNC, so they came forward with a request at 10 foot. They've got glass elements there. They came forward with glass elements. They've got a parcel that's north, they're saying that they're going to redevelop. But we're not talking about the setback on that building. So we're already, the applicant's grouping the two parcels for negotiation's sake on what happens here, and we as a governing body can't group them. It's illegal to do that. Attorney Sajak for Planning Commission said, because one of the concerns was the open space that came forward. We wanted to see the open space be maintained on the site. It's a non-conforming site. We agreed with Jack that it was a non-conforming site, but we couldn't legitimately request that they take some open space for the northern parcel because we couldn't group the two. But we're grouping in discussion that they're going to build there, they're going to tear down, they're going to put another building north, and then they're taking setbacks from 2 buildings north as the guideline for that corner. So again, I'm hesitant on the setback. I agree with Alderman Meyer that it should be a little bit further back than the current 25 feet, just to protect the applicant, for one. In the event that that road does get widened, it will get probably widened sometime in the future, maybe not while I'm alive and around, or it might happen sooner than we expect. And I just think the list of variants for a non-conforming parcel, they should be limited to some level, just in general.
Alderman Schneider. This is a developer who is willing to take a parcel of property that is very limited in its use, that needs these variances to develop the property. They've been in Mequon, I believe, since 2005. They want to continue to be in Mequon. They want to grow their business in Mequon. This is why they're expanding the building. We seem to always, it seems that we always give the people that want to bend the most the hardest time. This group has listened to every recommendation that was given to them. They have come back with improvements every time. They have agreed to all the limitations that have been put on them by the Planning Commission. They have agreed to remove a sign in their building. If you look at the design of the Associated Bank, the design of that building is typically their brand. You see that building, you know it's Associated Bank. They've agreed to take out the large sign, yet we grant sign waivers all the time for in the town center. But they've agreed to take that sign out.
That's a different zoning district too.
So we are doing them a disservice to try to limit what they do and to require them to go farther back than what the planning department has recommended. They have looked at this thoroughly. They have agreed that the gradual moving back of the properties to equal with the Starbucks works. I don't really understand why we would have to put them back farther than the Starbucks. This is a group, you bring up the concern of the next property that they're going to develop next to it once they tear down the existing building. Well, this is a group that has done nothing but bend over backwards and done everything we've asked them to do. So to think that they wouldn't do that on the next site, I think that's doing them a disservice. I fully agree that when it comes to the next parcel, they're going to do just as good a job and they're going to abide by the rules that are set forth by the Planning Commission or this body. I see no reason to deny this at all.
Looking for a motion to confirm.
Okay, I move to confirm.
Second. Motion and second to confirm. Thank you. Any further discussion? Call the roll.
Alderman Worth has recused himself. Alderman Garrow?
Aye.
Alderman Brian Schneider?
Aye.
Alderman Kathleen Schneider?
Aye.
Alderman Nurbin?
Aye.
Alderman Strelchuk?
No.
Alderman Bushy?
Aye.
Alderman Meyer?
No.
I wasn't calling.
5-2.
5-2. Conditional use grant is confirmed.
Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen. Next item on our agenda is 10748 North San Marino Drive, nuisance abatement order to show cause.
Mr. Mayor.
Mr. City Attorney.
Before you this evening is, as we identify in the packet, the process by which we would deal with a potential nuisance located on San Marino Drive. Also in front of you on the dais this evening was a written request by the property owner's new attorney who has asked for some time to in essence, prepare better as he was just retained to move forward, which generally is a fairly reasonable request usually. I will tell you that we've also been in discussions with the attorney already about potential resolutions to solve the issues that are occurring within the neighborhood as well. Before the meeting, I did talk. There's a number of folks from the neighborhood here who were obviously concerned about what would take place this evening, as they have significant concerns about the operations that are taking place there, and was able to describe for them some of the at least initial terms that we've been talking about in terms of a potential resolution, and have taken some of their feedback as well in terms of things that they might like to see as potential resolutions as well. My recommendation based on the request would be to adjourn this until next month, which would give both the attorney some time to figure out what's going on, but then also to allow us some time to maybe reach that resolution that we've already started working on. However, with that said, I do know that at least one of the property owners has indicated that they travel a bit and they're worried that they may not be in town for the next date, and so I do know that there's at least one of them, if not more, that would like to speak this evening, since they're here at the request of where we're at. So I would suggest that we hear them as part of the process, and then make a decision to adjourn based on the other request.
Okay, as you noted, we have a couple people want to speak. Rhonda Barton.
Good evening. I'm Rhonda Barton. I live at 10736 North San Marino Drive. Standing with me, we just thought it might be appropriate to see the support the neighborhood has. Mark Hirsch, Dr. Mark Hirsch is also going to be speaking. He is also signed up, but we have two other houses. We are the surrounding neighbors for this particular situation. Let me first start by indicating that we certainly are here from a professional standpoint, not anything to do with neighborhood likes or anything taken personally. We really believe they are lovely individuals and we welcome them into the neighborhood as neighbors. The concern I have, and I believe I speak on behalf, and Dr. Hirsch will also address this, is we live in a neighborhood. We have certain rules and regulations, we have certain guidelines as we are within the Mequon community, which we all have agreed to abide by. When we purchased our homes, some of us built, I built 2 homes, we understood that this was indeed a suburban neighborhood, a community that fosters growth, that it fosters family, that fosters education. We do not live in an area that we agreed to live next to a business. This neighborhood was not designated for business purposes. I think it is undisputed that we have a car dealership, a rental agency, that has been time and again warned and asked not to perform out of a personal residence as a business. There is undisputed fact that has been presented to this community that this is certainly not being used just as a residence. Now, some of the neighbors fear retaliation. Retaliation in that we are hoping and trying to shut down a business, not to remove these lovely individuals from being a part of our kind community, but rather removing the actual situation at hand. The situation has created a number of situations. It has created a mockery of what I believe this community stands for. It is one that there is noise from the car repairs, there is smells from the car repairs, there is a changing of the landscape and the diagram of that entire residence. There are spotlights all throughout the home, serving more like a car dealership. There are trees that are planted that will someday, as they grow, serve as a fence. There are constantly people coming in and out, primarily on the weekend when there are no less than 12 to 17 cars now stacked 2 by 2. It brings in strangers to a neighborhood where we have young families, we have families with single parents, we have families where there are children at home alone, and that creates a sense of insecurity, concern, and fear. Fear in a neighborhood that, again, is Mequon. Mequon, where, again, we pride ourselves on being this community, not living next to a car dealership. We have advertisements on local media sources, and Dr. Hirsch can address that. He knows a little bit more about that. But there is advertisement to come into our suburban area to rent your car, both professing the car's multi-language rentals available, because the gentleman does have a bilingual background. And that, again, is a really big concern. We have concern about the resale value of the homes in this area. And again, Dr. Hirsch can speak firsthand. Since July of 2016, our neighborhood went from kids running back and forth all throughout the community to cars coming in and out, deliveries on the street. In the evening hours, lights on because of the repairs being made, the sense of insecurity, property value diminishing, and just an all-around decomposition of what should not be. At a time that we promote increased property values, bringing in new families into an area where school districts are pride of this area, we are now taking second stance to being a mockery, one where the sense of I can ignore what is asked of me because the payout personally is greater than the bigger picture is taking over. I would like an opportunity to appear again if this does reappear. My concern with any settlement is that really the only room for settlement is that business is shut down. That this is not meant, until the law is changed, to be anything short of a residential neighborhood. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Barton. Mark Hirsch.
Hi, good evening. So, just some context of what I've experienced. I've lived in Mequon since 2005. I have a physician practice in Mequon as well. I do surgeries at St. Mary's Ozaki, and I play by the rules. And if I'm not playing by the rules and I'm doing something wrong, and that's pointed out to me, I change them. And that's because I value the community I'm part of. In 2016, we had new neighbors, and it became quickly obvious that there was a business being run in addition to the residential utilization. At the beginning, the thought was that there was a license from the city to run the business. I don't know exactly if there is or if there isn't. I've been told that there is no license to run the business from the city. The first business that we noticed is a wholesale car dealership, and we only know that because there's a huge amount of cars with wholesale dealer plates. The initial questions we had for the city, we were told that the resident stated that multiple members of the family are in the business, therefore there was justification for having wholesale license plates. There's too many. There aren't that many people living in the house. There's maybe 3 people who are actively driving. There could be 10 wholesale dealer license plates. There's been no desire to be compliant at all. From what I can gather, the license to operate a wholesale company is based out of Brown Deer. The place of business is on Bradley Road. When I visited Bradley Road, there is no display of any cars at all, which is basically the requirement of being a wholesale dealer, is having a place to display your cars. The cars are displayed on his residence. I don't even know if the gentleman has a license to run that business in Mequon. Either he's not in compliant and he has a license, or he's operating without a license. Shortly after that, a new business began, which was a car rental business. And so now, in addition to the wholesale license plate cars, there's cars with regular license plates. And if you go onto a website, I think it's www.turo.com, Turo, you can rent one of his cars, and he'll deliver it to you at wherever you want to be. We had one person come by our house asking, to rent a car from us, and they got confused on the address. But I think most of the cars are just kind of displayed. We're at the residence, they're parked kind of side by side. I mean, there can be, like, as Rhonda said, 16, 17 cars at any time on the property. So that's business number two, again, seemingly operating without the proper licenses from Mequon, and if with licenses, violating ordinances. There's just been a history of 2 years of noncompliance, and I certainly respect that any attorney that's given kind of last-minute notice wants to get their ducks in order before they present to the Common Council. This was the choice of the resident to retain a new attorney at the 24th hour. He's had plenty of opportunities to be compliant. He's chosen not to be compliant. I would say very little leeway should be given to somebody who behaves in this manner. We just sat here and talked about Associated Bank, and every time they're asked to do something, they come back and they do what they're supposed to do. This is not what we're dealing with our neighbor, unfortunately. If anything, this is just a cat and mouse game. It's just a way to kick the can down the road to be non-compliant. I just think that past performance in this case is indicative of future results. And then just from a business standpoint, I mean, we pay our taxes. We want value of our houses to appreciate. When you have a car lot 2 houses down from you, the value of your house goes down. We're a small cul-de-sac, and so we're not going to bring down the entire value of Mequon with our little small issue. But, there's also the domino effect. There's precedent, and if you let somebody not follow the rules in one place, well then, why follow the rules everywhere else? And so I appreciate your time. I appreciate you giving me the opportunity to speak. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hirsch. We also have Mr. Arkady Gorovich.
Hello guys, sorry, my English not so good because I'm originally Russian Jew and just 15 years in North America.
Use the microphone, please.
This is my daughter. Oh, sorry. Yes, sorry guys, hi, good evening. My English not so good. I try to explain myself wherever I can. My daughter, she study in the States. She speak English much better. She gonna help me. Okay, I heard here a lot of complaints. Can I do step by step? I want to explain myself. It is right, I'm used car dealer. I'm do strictly wholesale. I'm strictly prohibited to do any kind of retail business in Wisconsin and all United States because we are wholesale. My business operated from Bradley Road. I have occupancy permit there.
Mr. Gurevich?
Yep.
I don't mean to interrupt you, but
Okay.
You have a lawyer, right?
Correct.
And he's going to represent you in this matter?
That's fine, yes.
Okay. I mean, and certainly, I mean, I don't want to stop you if you think that you need to, but I mean, one of the requests from your lawyer was for him to have some time to be able to kind of be here and to present your case. He could help you with that, and so that's one of the requests. Okay. And I don't want to necessarily cut you off if you think that you have things to say this evening, but I also worry that if you've got a lawyer and he's wanting to make sure that he's representing you, I don't want you also to say something that you might regret as well. So.
Yep.
Well, shouldn't we first have the conversation whether we're going to do this tonight or not before he proceeds, or before you cut him off?
Right.
Just a thought.
It's your pleasure. Alderman Urban.
I guess this has been dragging out for quite some time. I understand there's a new attorney that's been assigned, but these residents have been waiting a good long time, well more than a year, that I'm aware of, and it's been going on probably longer than I've been aware of, to get some sort of resolution on this matter. first became aware of it about a year ago, and it had been getting some traction before that time. Ultimately, a deal needs to be struck that corrects the situation. What's going on there is commercial in nature, there's no doubt about it. There is no license from the city for the home business use, and given the types of operations that are going on there, none would be granted if so applied for. There's been repeated instances of fines being issued, coming to the table to negotiate, make a deal, break a deal, back at it again.
Well, I think we should get to the substance after we decide whether or not we're going to do this tonight.
My point is, it's been going on for quite a long time, and I personally don't see a reason to delay. I understand it's a reasonable request in most instances, but why put off the inevitable? Half the reason for bringing this forward tonight was to seek finality and get on with the process of correcting it. That's all I'll say with regard to whether or not we proceed or not.
Alderman Worth.
Mr. Sajak, your memo talks about what a nuisance is, but it doesn't really tell us what the effect of us finding a nuisance, what happens then, and how is this any different than the citations? Because I do have some concerns with somebody sending a letter on the date of a hearing. No judge in the world would tolerate that. And we're effectively sitting as a quasi-judicial body and hearing this. And it's a pretty common tactic just to delay things. But I also wonder, what are we doing here? Can you explain that?
Sure. So the first thing is that I was actually contacted by the attorney yesterday, and he had made the request verbally. I suggested to him that he file a written request just so that we had it for the record. He was not able to do that until today. So they're maybe not any better than what you've suggested, but just want to make sure that we have the record correct on that. In terms of what you do, if there is a determination that what is taking place here is a nuisance, what the code provides is that upon that finding, you then also issue an order to abate that nuisance. In this case, presumably that would be to cease operating the business operations from the site effectively.
How is that any stronger than giving daily citations?
The difference is that citations only work to the extent that you have an individual that is motivated by the money. We have plenty of individuals that just pay the citations when they get them, and that's that. I don't know whether that's the case here. He has, at least thus far, challenged all of the citations, and they're working their way through the process to ultimately trial, presumably, and some determination that's there. So we don't know for sure whether that would work in this case in terms of, okay, now you've got to pay a forfeiture of a handful of thousands of dollars based on the number of citations or not.
Isn't that all this is, or what is this? What happens when we
it's
simply a different citation?
Right. So what this then does is, if there is a finding of a nuisance, really it helps us with the next step, which is that either by virtue of this body saying, hey, stop what you're doing, is enough to convince them to stop what they're doing. Doubtful, I think, probably in most cases, but maybe it does. But what it does is it allows us then to proceed to the circuit court level, where we can then go to the judge and say, Judge, we want you to find this to be a nuisance. You don't need to make that determination anymore. We've got the Common Council that's already made that determination. We just need your assistance in helping to do that. And the circuit court has more authority and powers in terms of dealing with that. He can, impose contempt findings, for example, if orders are not complied with. That could potentially include jail time, potentially. So there's a little bit more power, a little bit more authority that quite honestly, the municipal court just doesn't have. The municipal court is just citations. So the concept here was that it was the first step in the process of ultimately taking it to that next step. Certainly, if we have an attorney that's willing to work with us, a property owner that's going to listen to his attorney, and take that process seriously, the end result is probably the same either way we go about it. It's just whether, the time and cost to do it effectively, because circuit court can be a costly and timely endeavor sometimes.
Thank you.
I'm comfortable taking it up tonight.
Yeah.
So let's
And I would like to hear what
proceed.
I'd obviously like to hear what the resident has to say. I'm not saying I don't want to listen, but I'm comfortable taking the issue up tonight.
Okay, and
And this has
as I
been going on
understand
for
it, the
3
re-
years.
the condition report from our health inspector, Mr. Kress, suffices as our determination of a nuisance.
Well, it's part of the record, and it certainly could be part of the foundation for the finding of the nuisance, provided that you believe that it's correct. And part of the process here is to hear what this gentleman has to say, and weigh that as to, what he has to say versus what the report says in terms of what conditions exist out there, and then make a determination if we think that that is a nuisance or not.
Okay. Is there any objection to continuing? Okay.
Nope.
Mr. Grovich?
Yes, please.
Please continue.
Okay. First time I want to say, my neighbors applied to police a few times. Police officers come over to my property and not find any valuations. Because no any business done from the property themselves. No, we have a lot of kids coming to our house. It's true, it's a family, it's friends. They have they have cars. It's true, I have a big driveway. I have an acre point to land, and I have a driveway capacity about 20 cars. What illegal here, I don't know. Second thing, I apply a few times to the department here to send somebody to inspect my property. Nobody want to listen to me. People can complain, but people maybe don't know details. Yes, I'm used car dealer. Part of my job is to drive different cars every day. It's true. But what illegal here? I don't do any operation from the house property. My cars sold through Greater Milwaukee Auto Auction, and I can prove it by the bill of sales here. All paperwork I can, whatever guys you're gonna request it, I can provide it. Checks, bills, all bank documents. I not collect any cent per year cash, because I don't do any kind of retail sales. I try to explain to the people, nobody want to listen to me. Yes, I have a big property, my house is actually open. This is why my neighbors see what's going on all around. My cars advertise only through wholesale auctions only, strictly, all the time, for last 8 years. I have occupancy permit in Brown Deer, that's correct. Yes, I run the rental business as well. My cars deliver directly to the address of the client. We don't do any kind of business from the house. I don't know what's the problem. Also, the health inspector pushed me to apply every day. He sent me the tickets and pushed me to apply to occupancy permit. He's supposed to tell me what kind of job he's forced to me to apply. He's supposed to tell me what kind of job I have to apply to. I don't understand. Anybody welcome to come to check my property and to find out the issues there. They have the picture at my house almost daily, every morning. I receive the tickets, $800 daily. Somebody can tell me where is the broken cars, where is the repair operations, oil, or something, evidence of the car repairs or car sales, signs. That's true, I have a lighting around, satellite lighting around the house, because my kids walking over the night, and this is convenient. It's not restricted. We don't have any signs of the business. We don't have any websites providing car sales business over our property. This is I tried to explain to attorney last time. We got agree for 7 vehicles parked, but we have I have 3 cars for pleasure. It's illegal? No. I pay my taxes. I can buy my cars legally. Those cars under my personal name. I have a lot of license plates, that's true. The law in Wisconsin permitted unlimited quantity of license plates. I have maybe around 10, that's true. But I not park the 10 licensed dealer cars in my property. There's only 3, maybe 4, depend on the weather and my operation daily. I work through the wholesale auctions. This is my job. The people maybe don't understand what's going on, but nobody come over to asking me, nobody come over to talk to me, to ask the questions. They go directly to your guys to complain. When I explain myself, nobody want to talk to me. Guys, please come over. You guys welcome to the property any moment and inspect. They also send the letter to come over here. They send the letter to police with the 2 police officers. I don't know when the police officers start to work like a mail delivery guys, but it's a different story. Why? I did something illegal, I did something crime. Nobody want to talk to me. Just the letters, inspector. We come over here daily. I ask guys, please come over to the property, check it, inspect it. Let's see, they complain about me, please come over, find the evidence of the illegal business operation. Nothing. I don't have any business operation from my house. This is the case. This is why you guys send it continuously, I am declined to pay or whatever. What I have to pay? 3 cars, my dealer license plates, I am drive. 3 cars or 4 cars pleasure. But this is my personal house. This is my personal inventory, my personal stuff, I mean personal cars. What's the illegal here? Cars not parked outside on the public roads and inside the driveway, nice house. What's the problem here? Please, before you guys make a decision, welcome to the house and inspect it. And maybe after you're going to get more clear picture of what's going on. That's all. Evidence of the documents of my business activity, it's here. I can provide to anybody who need it. Bill of sales from the auctions, continuously, bank accounts, whatever guys you need, please.
Regarding the lights that we have outside, that was previously installed by the previous owners, the Burgers, which I'm sure you know because you're friends. And that was a part of our condition when we purchased the house, so I would really much appreciate not addressing that specific issue. We have a dog that we walk 4 or 5 times a day, which includes at night, which is why we have to use those lights, and I don't think there should be any issue with that. Thank you.
One more thing, sorry guys. You guys applied to me regarding the delivery cars to my house, but the pictures you guys showed me last time, this is that gentleman doctor, he's bought a new Tesla, and that Tesla being delivered by the big, huge semi-truck to our driveway house. And this is what you picture it. Why he's not talking about this? Why he's not talking about this? He's driving like 70 miles an hour in our driveway. How many times it's happened? Okay, different story. We're going to talk about after. Anyway, guys, if you have questions, please come over. The pictures looks different than what it is.
So one of your businesses is that you rent cars through this Turo website, right?
I do, yes.
Okay. And you take the cars and you deliver it to folks?
Mostly it's 99% airport and key parking lot, yes.
Right, so you go to the airport, for example?
Yes, we deliver the cars to airport and the cars located not in the house. I have over 20 cars.
Right.
And no one picture show that quantity of cars. So I have my business location in Bradley, I operate from there. I not park them overnight, that's true, but office is there.
Where do you store the cars?
Different places. You have a public storages, you have a public parking lots, mostly like 60-70% of the cars always rented, so we don't need a storage.
Okay, and all of the vehicles that are on your property, what are all of those vehicles?
Sorry, what are you talking about? Right now it's 3 or 4 my dealer cars. I drive, my daughter work for me, my wife work for me, her father work for me. I have 3 cars, my pleasure cars for the summer. We keep them right now, snow, I cannot use them.
Okay, there are days where there are in excess of up to 16 cars on the property that are all registered to you. These are not neighbors or friends.
What's the problem against the law?
Okay, but these are the same cars that you're using
Maybe
as
it's
part
been
of your...
snow or something like that. Maybe it's happened once in a while. We never get that many cars in my property instead of some kind of party.
Right, but these are the same cars that you have listed on Turo, right?
I have to see the pictures. I don't know what... I have cars listed on Turo. I have cars not listed on Turo. It's... Again, it's not any business operation from that location. I mean, we not get any meeting with the customers, money, advertisement, or something like that.
We also have pictures of our family members' cars or friends' cars. When we do have a couple of number of people coming over, they do drive their own cars, and we have pictures and fines for those people. And I don't think it's okay for us to come and ask for permission from our neighbors to have our friends come over every day if there's going to be more than like 5 cars on the driveway. That does happen often. We have a big family, a lot of international people. Because we are such a big family, coming, visiting, I don't think there should be any issue with that. And they park on our own personal driveway, where our neighbors, when they have people come over, park on the streets, and sometimes take up our street public parking.
It's not
So,
used as a public, but
that is not the concern at this time, but that is the case.
Right, so, can you just come look at this picture? Who's- So some of those cars are the cars that you put on Turo? Okay, and why are they on that property?
Because maybe I need to hold them for some time.
He's all like, you find them from that, you know, just read them first. It's just cat and mouse.
We're talking about the business operation like that Sir Bruce sent me the conditions. What does it mean, business operations? No one of the conditions above following. It's not fit for me. Nothing happened from those conditions in my property.
I think,
But, yes.
if I may, I think the crux of the complaint is there's cars that are for sale and cars that are being rented that are frequently on site. If you're not renting them out of there, they're still being stored there. So it's a staging point for operations. I had a resident in my old neighborhood who he had his own landscaping company, and he had all of his crew come over and parking on the streets during the day, which, by the way, there's really no street parking in Mequon without calling the police and getting permission. But he was having 6, 8 cars park on both sides of the street, and my street was almost impassable. We had to intervene in that instance and have him pick a park and ride or something to get his workers to stage his operations out of for his commercial use. Now, was he having clients over there? No, but he was leaving cars littering the road all day and blocking traffic. It's still a commercial use. It's not the primary use, but it's storage, and I think that's the complaint from the residents.
I understand your point, but half of my neighbors keep their working trucks over the night in their own driveways. I have pictures. I not collected much pictures, but if need, I can go one by one and picture it in the evening time. At least 50% of the people work with some cars, and this is there.
We're not really here to talk about your neighbors, and, you know, I mean, we work on an a complaint basis, so if you think that neighbors are violating the rules just as they've alleged that you are, then you can, identify that through a complaint process, and we'll inspect and make a determination as if there's a violation. But just because everybody does something doesn't make it right.
It's not my point. It's just I answered the question for the
Well,
person.
I
have a
park my
picture
car in my
just
driveway
today.
too, but it's 1 or 2 cars, not 16. And I'm not renting any of them or intending to sell them.
Well, guys, I come over here. I want to finish the story by the piece. I don't want to fighting with any of my neighbors. Just we have to understand each other, and that's all. This is why I'm here.
Alderman
We
Sawchuk.
cannot get tickets every day like $800. It's
I'm just going to be really direct here. I've got the same issue going on in my district, and I'm getting a ton of complaints, and I think it's just honestly a matter of time until that resident comes forward with the possibility of a nuisance as well. You've admitted here tonight that a component of your business is storing the vehicles and staging in preparation for rental or sales. If you're driving a personal vehicle home with a dealer plate, I don't know that the city staff would object to it, nor do I feel your neighbors would. If you, your wife, and your daughter each had a vehicle that came home from the business with dealer plates, 3 vehicles in the driveway, I don't believe you'd be sitting here tonight. But the volume of up to 16 cars, some of which are listed online for rent, in excess of the family members living at the house, and indicates in writing with a printout here that's a provable point There's a commercial operation going on, and the component of the commercial operation in your yard is an overflow parking lot, just like it is at the resident in my district. So what you need to understand is, as you're trying to say it's your right to have all these vehicles, if you were a car collector and you had cars in your driveway, maybe, but you're running a rental agency, you're running a wholesale business. If you bring those vehicles home and multiple vehicles sit in your driveway for multiple days, that is part of the business component. That is not your daily use. You have a business operation in Brown Deer. Those vehicles should be stored in Brown Deer. If you'd like a place in Mequon, rent a commercial location in Mequon, agree with your landlord there and work with city staff to get approval to leave your vehicles there and leave them there, and then go to and from your home in peace. You're happy, your neighbors are happy, and this whole issue could be easily resolved. The issue at hand here is you're trying to pull different components, in my opinion, forward on what is right and how you have guests and visitors. I don't care about the lights. I hope that you enjoy the lights and they're secure and your family is safe. That's fine. And I will agree with you there, the safe passage of your dog and everything else. And your daughter and her friends, as they come and visit, again, community safety is critical. If you feel the lights are needed and they were installed either now or after, before or after you moved in the residence, I don't really care. That's immaterial to me. What I'm seeing is a driveway with 16 cars parked in it. I've seen a similar issue in my neighborhood. They were all dealer plates. City staff intervened. City staff stated that they either needed to be personal vehicles. They sent out a memo, said they needed to be moved, and lo and behold, they've got all personal plates on. But still the dealer plates show up, still there's unlicensed vehicles in the driveway at that residence. If any of that is repeating at your property, you're running a commercial business out of a residential neighborhood, and there's no zoning that allows for that. You're not being a good neighbor. And again, as you're looking at this, are you being a good neighbor? If your family and friends are coming to visit, and you're a social person, your neighbors can object all they want, but that's your right to enjoyment of your home. Try to be respectful of them, they'll be respectful of you, and I don't think that we'd have this before us today. But having 16 cars parked in your driveway on a regular basis, and then I've got before me a list of $49 per day, $57 per day, and these vehicles, and some of which were noted as being in your driveway, and they weren't just one or two, there were several. You can only have one employee from your business working for you at your home and a family member each. You're in excess of what's allowable.
Where do you get that?
Huh?
You can have a...
Home occupation.
Maybe conversations.
If you've got an approved home occupation.
Which he does.
Right.
So I'm just highlighting.
If you have a legal home occupation.
If you have an approved occupation. Can't have any unless
So-
you have an approved occupation.
What the residents are objecting to is not you as a person, not the security of you, your family, and your daughter, but they're objecting to the overflow parking in your driveway. Just rent a space and remove the cars.
It's already removed.
And that's
But they
all I
still
think
send me
anybody's
the
been
tickets.
asking for from a city level. If it's a wholesale business and you're wholesaling them out and you're storing them in your yard, that's part of a commercial component of business. You're an overflow parking
Don't
lot
store
for
the
your
dealer
commercial
cars there.
wholesale dealership. It's not an allowable use on your property. Okay?
Thank you for that. And we completely agree. We have removed the cars, but since then, yesterday, we received another citation with another like $800 fine. We only have 4 cars on our property. It's listed as 6, and there is another complaint. It's like they don't want us to have any cars, and we are now following the laws. Like, we even have a picture right here where it says 6 cars. There's literally only 4 here. So we're trying to be good neighbors.
I'd object to that one, for sure.
So, I mean, there's so much that we can do. We are people, we are living, just like they are, and we are being as compliant as we can. The 16 cars was too much, we agree. We removed a lot of those, and we should have not had any issues since then, but they're still arising, and that is a really big concern for us right now as well.
6 cars ticket also. It
And-
is daily.
And we do have an agreement that we are allowed 7 that we signed. So, thank you.
Well, I think there's a point where continuing this doesn't get us much further. They've had a chance for their say, the neighbors have, and they have admitted that they're running a business there. I'd be more concerned about work out a deal, all the rest of that, if our determination tonight had immediate adverse consequences to the whether you call them a defendant, respondent, whatever they are. But it doesn't, other than if there's continuing violations or something happens going forward, the city has some greater clout. I think under the circumstances, I'd move to have a determination that there is a nuisance here.
Second.
Motion and a second. Further discussion?
Would that motion likewise include in order to abate the nuisance?
Yes, I'm sorry, with an order to abate the nuisance. Which means, by the way, if you don't run a business out of your house anymore, nothing happens. But if you do, the city has that much more enforcement authority.
And just so we know, Counselor, what is the next step?
Well, the next step, based on assuming that the motion would pass, and obviously hate to necessarily assume things, but assuming that the motion would pass again, as Alderman Worth indicates, if the business operations cease to operate from the premises, that's the end of where we're at. If the business operations continue, then likely we would then seek to have the circuit court address and use their powers to help us address the problem that exists with a nuisance in the neighborhood.
How many cars I can keep it?
Well, I mean, the number of cars is something that I mean, there's some variety that could potentially be there. What I will suggest to you is that you've got a number of citations with lots and lots of money that's due because of the citations. The specifics in terms of what may or may not be allowed, in terms of numbers of cars, will be something that we'll just work out as part of the process of dealing with those citations.
1 second, sorry. Спроси, что с этим agreement. We have agreement signed for 7 cars.
Well, you guys signed the agreement. The problem with that agreement is that the city never signed it, and the reason the city never signed it is because between the time that you signed the agreement and your attorney mailed it to me and I got it in the mail, you guys were already breaking the agreement. So I was not going to sign an agreement that you guys had no intention of living up to because you had just proven that you weren't going to do it. You had already violated it.
Yes, but tomorrow you guys send it one more ticket again. What I have to do in this situation? How many cars I can keep it for today?
Well, as I say, we can have these discussions as part of resolving the citation. I'm happy to talk to you or your lawyer. Actually, I'll be your lawyer more specifically tomorrow. And we can start working on resolving those issues. But at least in terms of whether or not a nuisance exists, the number of vehicles is not really the point based on what the council's finding. Council's finding thus far is that the business operations is what the nuisance is.
Is this a 2-car garage?
3.
And that was 3 cars?
3.
So I'll tell you what, nobody'd bother you if you had 3 cars in the garage and 1 outside. You'd never hear from anybody. Maybe even you had 2 outside. I don't think you'd have this discussion tonight. Now, is that a hard and fast rule? No, but it's sort of a starting point for thinking about how to keep from having the city bothering you.
Can I say something?
Might I offer an amendment to have enforcement staff cease issuing tickets for some amount of time that the city attorney shall deem reasonable to work through the details. I don't want to make up a number here because I don't know how long this negotiation takes, but let's give it a chance, assuming that the motion passes.
I'd like the city attorney's advisement on amount of time so we know what we're agreeing to.
Yeah, provide a...
I mean, I would anticipate, based on the discussions we've had thus far, that there'll probably be some resolution in the next 10 to 15 days would be my guess. there's factors that go into that, availability of everybody and that kind of
Okay,
stuff,
so-
but.
2 weeks from Friday.
2 weeks. 2 weeks from Friday. I love it. Okay, 2 weeks from Friday.
That's a friendly
That's
amendment
that's
to my
amendment.
motion.
May I say something?
Go ahead.
So, thank you for all the input. So let's say we go ahead and resolve the situation. Are we still going to have people coming and monitoring our house every single day, taking pictures? Let's say we do have family and friends coming in. There is going to be an access of cars. They're not our personal cars, family. Are we still going to be in violation of this nuisance or whatever it's called? I'm not exactly sure in the terminology. And are we still going to have to be paying fines in this if our neighbors think that we're doing something in violation when it's not?
Discuss that outside of here.
That's something that we'll discuss.
Thank you.
How we deal with that.
Motion and a second. Call the roll.
Alderman Brian Schneider.
Aye.
Alderman Kathleen Schneider.
Aye.
Alderman Nurbin.
Aye.
Alderman Strelchak.
Aye.
Alderman Bushy.
Aye.
Alderman Meyer.
Aye.
Alderman Worth.
Aye.
Alderman Garrow.
Aye. It's unanimous. The nuisance abatement order is approved.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Just for your purposes, I'll reach out to the lawyer first thing tomorrow, and we'll talk and come up with resolutions to all of your questions, okay?
Next item is mayoral appointment of Robert Nurnberg to the Board of Police and Fire Commissioners.
Move approval.
Second.
Motion and a second to approve. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Appointment is approved. We will now convene as Committee of the Whole. The first item is overview regarding the proposed reconstruction of the Civic Campus parking lot.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, Council. We'd like to give an overview of the 3 resolutions that you have prepared for action tonight, later on the agenda. The 3 resolutions relate to the award for the project for reconstructing the Civic Campus parking lot that's located at the south end of the Civic Campus, a resolution related to a development agreement between the City of Mequon and Secure Funds, who are the owners of the Mequon Town Center, and then a third resolution that is in a 3-party agreement between the city, the American Legion, and Secure Fund, again, owner of MTC, for shared parking and access. So just to give a brief overview, the reconstruction of the Civic Campus parking lot, in 2018, we bid this project. It came in just over $1.2 million. We decided to rebid that project. Bids went out in December. The lowest bid came in at $922, and that was a 15% savings. The funding sources allocated for this include a financial contribution from MTC1 for $216,000, Green Solutions funds for $305,000. The resolution also addresses funds available from the Capital Parking Lot Fund at $132,000, and then the remaining would come from the Town Center TIF at $268,000 to get us to that total. As you can see, the MTC1 contribution and the Green Solutions contribution is more than 50% of the total project cost, and MTC1 is contributing over 23%. The total project cost results in a per space cost of just over $5,000. We're reconstructing the parking lot that currently has 136 spaces, and it will now have 179 public spaces. MTC1's contribution is for a total of 42 spaces, and at that dollar total cost per space, you can see how we arrived at the $216. The Public Works Committee weighed in on each 3 of these resolutions earlier this evening. They recommended approval of all 3 resolutions by a vote of 3-0. There was an amendment to the resolution to award the project for construction. That's Resolution 3589. The amendment was to remove the funding source of the capital parking lot funds and distribute that into the payment through the TID district. So the amended amount, given that recommendation, gets the TID contribution up to $400,900 and some change. And we can confirm for you that the Mequon Town Center Development Agreement is in compliance or matches the contingencies of the Memorandum of Understanding that the City Council and Secure Funds agreed to in March of 2018 when we contemplated the design and the bid of this project. MTC1 owners were part of the concept design process of the parking lot, as was the council, as we went through a number of concepts and alternatives in terms of that parking layout. That's all I have.
Any questions?
Yeah, perhaps just a clarification.
Pardon?
Just a clarification. At committee, we discussed funding the parking lot residual through the TID rather than using our capital parking lot fund, because we have many deferred maintenance needs in the city. And we discussed using those funds for something other than the City Hall parking lot, even though they had the funds set aside, and shifting that to the TID, since we have capacity in the TID to absorb those costs. And it's a problem that's unique to that area of town, so why shouldn't the TID from that part of town carry the cost of it and not the taxpayer? We've got many funding challenges for other things we could be using the 132,000, almost 133,000 for. Hence the recommendation from the committee.
Recommendation from what?
The committee.
What committee?
Public Works.
Oh. That happened tonight?
Okay. She just summarized it, so we're ready to move on.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Oh, I have a question.
Sorry.
I'm trying to raise my somewhere. Can you, your memo, I don't think really explains.
Use the microphone.
Oh, I'm sorry. Really explains the changes to the shared parking agreement, and particularly how they impact the Legion Post, since I think they end up being kind of the, have taken a lot of the brunt of the parking problem.
Yeah, a number of the contingencies in the agreement are similar to the original one. However, the amended agreement does include the American Legion, so it's a three-party agreement. The structure of that agreement requires that Secure Fund continues to maintain their property and maintenance, or excuse me, easement area. We will continue to maintain ours. There is a portion of the city-owned property that extends up the rear driveway ramp to get to the MTC1 property. Secure Fund will continue to maintain that portion of the city-owned site. And then essentially the agreement looks to capture a number of the recommendations that were a result of the TADI parking and traffic study. Those include, obviously, well, this isn't part of the agreement, but we did raise the Logaman Center and achieved the creation of 30 to 50 new stalls, which was a recommendation of that study. One of the other recommendations was to allow opportunities for special event and valet parking for both MTC1 users, the American Legion, and City Hall special events. So we've designed the lot, and the agreement addresses their ability to reserve a designated portion of that. The recommendation was to reduce and remove all of the restricted parking at MTC1. So there's a statement in the agreement that requires Secure Fund, as they renew new leases, to remove those designated restricted parking stalls. It was recommendation to reduce the number of 30-minute limited parking. We've done that on our end. Also to reduce and relocate City Hall designated vehicles. We've done that as well. And then last, to encourage the MTC1 employees to park on Cedarburg Road. And there is a statement in the parking agreement, although not foolproof. We've asked for them to work towards that type of arrangement and scenario as best they can. Of course, if we continue to note that that isn't actually happening, there are some opportunities that are stated within the agreement that allow us to attempt to resolve that with them.
Well, that's my follow-up question. Explain whatever opportunity there is for readdressing this if the uses that they have exacerbate the parking in their parking lot. Right now they've got some vacancies. Doesn't appear that there's a requirement that you have employees park off-site. What happens if the problem gets worse rather than better?
Well, one of our mechanisms for control, which is really outside of the agreement, is that we have the ability at the time of a building permit or a request for an occupancy permit to review the parking demand based on that proposed new use. And we can deny that permit, or we can structure the proposal of that new tenant to be able to comply with that parking. So maybe it's a reduction in square footage. And as we talked about at Public Works earlier tonight, that's somewhat of a fluid process. You could have a less intense tenant move into one of the buildings, which allows and frees up some additional parking supply for a future tenant in another portion of the building.
Yes, the underlying probably most significant problem here was, if I remember correctly, the underestimation or the undercalculation of employees, particularly in the Cafe Hollander restaurant.
That's correct.
But this doesn't really require them to resolve that issue then. Like say, hey, your employees have to park in the Logan Center or on Cedarburg Road. But that's concerning. Okay, those are my questions.
I'd agree with what Alderman Worth is saying. The complaints coming forward on this property are that the business clients can't get to the location, or they have to park too far away and they feel that they're losing business. I think at minimum, it should at least be a requirement that the employees park off-site. Now, I wasn't on council when this was voted on. I probably would have supported the development. I would have probably had a few more questions about parking. But in listening to those meetings, I don't know, and I haven't found in my research, but I thought I heard that there was parking downstairs that was going to be allocated for employee parking, and that wasn't a concern. Underground parking, if I know that they don't want public parking underground just for the security of the residents going to and from their vehicles, but business owners and leased tenants, and minimizing some of that level of parking with a couple lead people within those business known individuals parking under there would reduce the impact of that parking lot and free up maybe 10, 20 spots.
Well, there probably aren't available spots.
What's that?
There probably aren't available spots.
We did talk about that as an option. There was a concern about mixing public parking with the residential parking, and they do want to continue to be able to offer the same number of parking stalls for each apartment as they always have. Of course, that's a huge, selling component in terms of renting those spaces. What we talked about more recently is utilizing the on-street parking on Cedarburg Road. One of the things that the TADI, report identified that was that those go very underutilized, and that there could be a number of motorists who don't feel comfortable parallel parking on Cedarburg Road, given the one-lane kind of constant traffic that's occurring there. So the employees utilizing that parking because they're staying for a number of hours throughout the day would probably be a great way to utilize that existing parking that's otherwise not used. But we talked about some kind of sticker or kind of like reward system for their employees to be able to utilize that. I think it's just the question is, how do you go about enforcing that?
I don't know how you go about enforcing on that, and I don't know, I mean, we'd look for a recommendation from you and your team. So
Well,
as you figure it
I
out, let
think-
us know.
Yeah, I'm not sure we were able to come up with a good
And
solution.
again, I don't want my comments to come across as being, ungrateful for Locree's willingness to contribute
Right.
to the shared parking. I mean, they're being a good neighbor, they're doing everything ethically, they're just really, trying to minimize that problem. But I think just even one step further, my overall concern as a council member is the health of that building and,
Yeah.
and the ability for the public to get to that space and use those spaces to spend money in those businesses, and anything that we can do to, heavily encourage that. Maybe enforcement's done by the property owner, but with city monitoring, and if we notice that it changes too much, we kind of reach out. I don't know the policy on it. I'm looking for a recommendation on it, but I really just want to see those businesses be as vital as they can, and really kind of just, staff does a great job working with developers on just kind of mitigating maybe some of these small issues that
Yeah.
put the developer in a better spot and allow for those consumers to get to those places. I mean, even in the last month, there have been several times that I've tried to go over at like what I wouldn't have thought would be as peak of an hour, and there's one, maybe two spots left.
There's one, you're good.
Well, Alderman Bushy and I had the same conversation yesterday about how we would go about that. I mean, it does require them to modify those lease agreements as new tenants come in. And if we weren't seeing a notable change, I mean, obviously we would have the ability to, review whether those changes actually occurred. The other option that, was discussed internally was at least, and there's only, I think, 12 spaces, but getting the employees maybe to park in the enclosed at-grade parking, because it doesn't seem as, noticeable to the general public or the customers that that's available for public parking. So if those are, utilized by employees as well.
That's exceptionally helpful in there for elderly. And when I visited the
Oh, yeah.
facility with elderly people, they just they really prefer to get out in there so they don't have to step on the ice and things like that. I think anything surface that's accessible to the public, I don't want to indicate that employees should be parking there. Anything that is available underneath where they can have a trusted person parking underneath where they wouldn't put the residents at risk, I think that's an appropriate place to redirect that parking traffic and that volume to just free up some space for, the integral motion of the facility.
Yeah, just the hourly and day-to-day. Locree did do their own survey of how the parking lot was being utilized throughout last fall, and they did realize that there were more employees parking in that parking lot than what they had expected. And so they did send a message to the tenants. And then they were also finding that guests of residents or even residents of the units were choosing to park on the surface lot. And some of those vehicles were, parked overnight and staying for a couple of days, even though there's guest parking available downstairs or their own allocated, private space in the below grade. So I think those are a couple areas where we can continue to make some efforts.
Good.
If there's, I don't know, Brian, if you have any suggestion on how to make that language stronger. I mean, I think we recognize some of the challenges with enforcing that particular matter, and that's why it's suggested in
Yeah, I mean, that
greatest
ultimately
extent
was the
possible.
concern is that irrespective of how powerful we make the language, the reality is that enforcement becomes the challenge. How do you identify that it's an employee or not? In some cases, maybe it's obvious they're wearing the shirt from the bank or whatever. But in other cases, it's difficult to identify maybe who is an employee or who is a resident that should be parking downstairs that isn't. I think that at least when we drafted it, we envisioned that we would use the language we did, which was that we're going to encourage you to continue to you as the owner to do these, with the recognition that they have their own vested interest in making sure that members of the public are going to continue to want to visit that. And the way that we do that is to make sure that parking is easy and available for them and all of those types of things. And having all of those spots filled with employees the end of the day isn't good for their business. And it's something that I think that they have a pretty vested interest in trying to police themselves. And so
agree.
that's kind of how we ended up with the language we did, was just that recognition, so.
Yeah, I agree, and just as a final mention, I'd like to agree with what Alderman Nurbin says. If we can pull the funding out of the TID versus the improvements, I think that would be reasonable.
Mr. Jones.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would just piggyback on the city attorney's comments and the Director of Community Development's comments. Pending the council's approval of the contract award this evening and completion of the parking lot construction later this year, I think we as staff would look to utilize that opportunity to work with MTC1 and Lockery to really publicize and promote the opportunity for employees and emphasize the need for employees to park in our new expanded parking lot, probably situated up near where the Logan Center used to stand. And use that opening of the lot as an opportunity to reinforce and reemphasize the need for the success of Town Center and the employees to park further away.
Maybe some wayfinding signs.
Smaller scale, though.
Yes.
Alderman Schneider.
With the addition of Spur 16 and Foxtown, I would assume that with the new competition coming in, that those businesses in MTC1 will realize really quickly that they better make their employees park somewhere else, or they're going to lose that business to the next development down. So I think, fluidly, I mean, we want them all to do well, but really it's ultimately MTC1's choice whether they do well, and that's by their tenants emphasizing to their employees to park somewhere else. Honestly, we can't control that. That is up to them to enforce that on their own, and I think they will learn the hard way if they don't do that, because they're just going to go down the road and go somewhere else where there is parking and where they can eat and enjoy the other amenities. So that's all I have to say.
No other questions?
Come on.
All right. Pardon?
Next item.
Next item. Resolution 3599, resolution rejecting the bids for the Mequon Thiensville Community Gateway project.
Yes, we did release the bids in December. We did receive 6 qualified bids. The Community Gateway Committee has been working on the design with Growth over the last several months. The lowest bid came in at about $864. The committee has done a really great job of fundraising. They had met their original goal based on the original anticipated cost of the project. And they, staff, after reviewing the bids, finds that there's one item that has significant variability, and we might need to tighten up the bid document associated with that. And there's a couple other elements within that bid that we'd like to explore a little bit further to see if we can lower the project cost. Giving ourselves some time to rebid this project would not necessarily impact the construction timing for the project to still get completed yet this year. Because of the cost escalation in the project, there is some additional fundraising that needs to be done. The committee is committed to continuing their efforts. And so we're just looking to, reevaluate that bid, look at any value engineering that we can do. One of the things we might consider doing is a geotechnical review of the soil, because one of the estimated costs came in really high, because we're not sure what kind of structurability we're dealing with there. There is a lot of junk over there that's been thrown, I think, from the Milwaukee Bridge being constructed. So that might allow us to, reduce a little bit of a contingency that we might have saw in the bids related to that item. So our staff's recommendation is to reject the bids at this time, reevaluate, and then hopefully return with bids yet this spring.
Move to reject.
Second.
Motion and a second to recommend rejecting the bids. This will, again, Any further discussion?
Or if you wanted to be more specific, you're going to recommend the approval of the resolution, which rejects the bids.
Okay.
Yeah.
That sounds good.
What he
True.
said.
All right, call the roll.
Alderman Kathleen Schneider.
Aye.
Alderman Nurbin.
Aye.
Alderman Strelchuk.
Aye.
Alderman Bushy.
Aye.
Alderman Meyer.
Aye.
Alderman Worth.
Aye.
Alderman Garrow.
Aye.
Alderman Brian Schneider.
Aye.
Mayor Avondra.
Oh, aye. I get
Still
the
on
vote.
committee of the whole.
All right.
Why don't we just do
9-0, and that's
I
approved.
sat on the committee of the whole. Oh, 'cause I didn't go to-
Next item is ordinance 1540, amending Chapter 58 of the zoning code to allow specialty trade contractors and building service providers as permitted uses in the B5 industrial zoning district.
This is in front of the Planning Commission. This was sponsored by Alderman Strelchek in response to a request from Deer Shield LLC to open a pest control business in the B5. The staff and the city attorney worked on language that would allow for specialty trade contractors or building service providers without outside storage to be located within the B5. This includes landscaping, exterminating, carpeting, plumbing, electrical, and janitorial services with the exclusion of outdoor storage. So this would go into our B5 zoning district. This is just a first reading tonight. It'll be taken up next month.
Anybody have any questions? Okay.
When appropriate, I'd make a motion to suspend the rules. Take it up tonight.
You can't.
Can't?
It's a public hearing.
Public hearing, yes, I'm
it's in
sorry, I
15.
made a mistake.
Wouldn't be anybody speaking at this public hearing.
What's that?
Never mind. We'll now reconvene as a common council and take up ordinances. The first one is ordinance 1538, amending the PUD ordinance for the properties at 6209 West Mequon Road and 11050, 11127, 11124 North Industrial Drive to increase the number of single-family dwellings from 21 to 23 as part of the mixed-use development. This was recommended by the Planning Commission in December. First reading was here in January.
I'd move approval on this.
Second.
Motion and a second to approve. Any discussion? Alderman Meyer.
My only concern with this is, first of all, why? Second of all, now, is their city staff have a definitive size for these lots? Because from what it's listed inside, now they'll be able to build from 30 to 35 feet, or whatever the 30.5 to 30 feet. So what is the size going to be? And now we're dropping down from, we're supposed to be 36, now we're down to 30 feet.
I have basically the concept plan in front of you on the screen. It kind of blows up what you have in the packet, a little bit more detail. There's 3 separate sections, as you can see, north, middle, and south. These have varying lot widths. The northern properties are 30.5, the middle are at 32, and the bottom are at 35. So they are a little bit smaller than the previous 21. Basically what they did is they added one more lot on this block and then one more lot on this block. The 36 requirement at the time was in place because there was a concern that there was not going to be enough space on each side of the buildings. So by adding the 2 buildings, one of the things we did work on was to shift all the buildings, and they'll be required to be shifted to one side so that there'll be basically an 8 to 10 foot gap between each of the buildings. That was basically one of the prime reasons for that 36-foot minimum, to provide enough light on both sides of the property. So now you'll have actually a wider separation between the buildings than what the code allows. The code says basically you have to have a 5-foot separation for a single story and a 7-foot for a 2-story. So here you'll have more than that with the way that he's laying out the plan, that they'll all be shifted to one side.
And there's no setback from the property lines required for this at all?
Not on the one side, no. That was part of the approval of Planning Commission, that they waived that setback on that side to have the greater setback on the other side.
Alderman Strelchek.
I'd just like to highlight that I really like this plan. I wouldn't support this density anywhere else in the city. I think this is the one spot within the city that it's appropriate. The quality of the building designs that have come forward is exactly what I'd hoped for in this area. One of my objections to the apartments in the overall town center area was that really people they didn't have ownership in the area. Encouraging ownership in the area with these homes is what I really wanted to see, and I'm really excited to see before us tonight. Adding 2 homes to increase the ratio of ownership versus rental is what I would have wanted to see in the beginning. So I'm very supportive of this, and I will vote in favor of it tonight.
Alderman Schneider. Can you just address the code regarding the detached garages?
Sure. When the requirements for single-family was approved by the council for the town center zoning district, there was a requirement that the garages had to be attached to the dwelling. The applicant applied for a request to have some of the garages be detached. The planning commission and staff recommended that there be a certain percentage attached, certain percentage detached. The planning commission basically felt it was a market issue and that they did not want to require any of them to be one way or the other or a certain percentage. So in this case, he can have either attached or detached garages.
What do we allow residents in Mequon in general to do?
We don't have a requirement. You could build a house with a detached garage if you want.
Alderman Bushy.
I do have to admit that the weather is not conducive to detached garages at the moment, but it's because I have to go outside to my garage. Trying to figure out the picture here, wrap my head around the numbers. I'm sitting here looking at, going down to 30.5 feet. I know football season is over, and it was over a lot earlier for us, but 30.5 feet is essentially a first down. I mean, it's, I'm thinking in terms, it's 10 yards. And then if I take it right, you're removing approximately 9 feet from that. So the width of the house itself is then 7 yards, 21 feet or so.
Roughly.
So to me, that's a little bit concerning as far as the feasibility of making the sales, although that's not my department. What I am concerned about overall is over the last 2 years with Spur 16, that one of the complaints that's come up over and over and over again is the morphine, that the final product doesn't look like what the initial product or project was that was voted on. And so I'm inclined that when the city staff say that there's a good reason to make a change to the plan and making that recommendation to the developer, that I understand from that perspective, but I'm very concerned about this incremental change of what the project started out and what we end up in the end, and then we're sitting here again like with Spur 16 with a lot of people very uncomfortable with the end product compared to what was initially approved.
And I will say that originally when we first met with them about the idea of the pocket homes, they did have the 23 homes. But when they saw the text amendment that was coming forward to allow the single family with the size requirement, they did drop it to the 21 to meet that. But then I think afterwards had an idea that, well, maybe if we just shift the buildings over and have a greater setback, we can meet the intent of that requirement, and then asked for the, why they're here asking for the additional 2. I mean, it would have been a lot easier to handle it through the first time. This is a lot of process to go through for the PUD for 2 additional units, but that's how it was approved, so that's why we're here.
This actually improves the green space on the parcel as well, does it not?
Well, by shifting it over, you'll actually have a wider, you have a potential for a wider setback between buildings than you would with the other way.
I've been on planning commission long enough that I think that what we see is a large project coming forward, but as they get into the project, there's some nuances that need to be adjusted or shifted. And I don't think the request is unreasonable, and I don't think this is morphing out of control. I think it's 2 units. They found a way to make it work. Again, if it's feasible and it meets city requirements and what was set forth by planning commission, I don't know that it's a problem to vote in favor of it tonight.
In for a motion.
We have
Made a motion and a second.
Okay. Any further discussion, Alderman Schneider?
I will not be voting for it tonight, and it's based on the calls that I've received, the emails I've received from not only residents in my district, but from residents throughout Mequon, of which most of them, first off, didn't even know that these were approved to begin with. Now, whether that's due to their negligence or just that we're not getting the message out there enough for people to take interest. But they're telling me to, deny these, and I had to unfortunately tell them they're already approved. And so they have asked me that this is something they're not desiring. This is something they don't think fits in Mequon, that the size requirement is not something that's consistent with what Mequon has done in the past and what Mequon has been. And so for that reason, I will be saying no.
Alderman Garrell?
Are most of these two-story?
That's going to be up to the market. My guess is probably yes, but that's going to be a market issue with the developer.
Then, I guess, I have people in my district that are moving now. They're getting older. They can't climb the stairs. They're moving to ranches. They're moving to something that's one story with an attached garage because they don't want to walk out in the snow and they don't want to go through a yard. So I imagine that this is going to probably be younger people. It's not really built for older people. I like to see, I think the proximity of one to another. I've lived in apartments when I couldn't afford a home, and I've lived in smaller homes when I first bought a home, and it created some neighbor disputes. They're right next door. The dogs, your dog's not on a leash, or this or that, or this or that. So I probably won't vote for this tonight. Again, I echo Alderman Bushy's, things that change and change and change. I was fairly upset with the Spur 16, the way that changed again and again and again. We don't have our rock climbing wall, and we don't have our community center, and we don't have our bowling alley, and we don't have all the other things that was in there. So I'm gonna vote no. And again, I pretty much forgot about it, but boy, did I get a number of calls when this came out in the newspaper about how great this was and how Mequon was asking for this. My residents laid into me, and I said I didn't vote for it. I mean, I didn't. This isn't something that I voted for. That's where the Common Council says the direction we're going, and that's what the newspaper says the direction we're going. But the residents aren't too excited about it, so hopefully the developer can sell these, and he doesn't have a whole lot of problems in there and the like, but I'm not going to vote for it because I just don't agree with it at all. It doesn't fit the, I don't know, it's going to have to be younger families that move in there, and that's going to be a lot of crowding, so that's all.
Call the roll.
Alderman Nurbin?
Aye.
Alderman Strelchuk?
Aye.
Alderman Bushy?
No.
Alderman Meyer?
No.
Alderman Worth?
Aye.
Alderman Garrell?
No.
Alderman Brian Schneider?
No.
Alderman Kathleen Schneider?
Aye.
4-4.
I'll vote aye. Motion passes. And move on to ordinance 1541, amending chapter 59 of the zoning code to rezone the property located at 4828 West Donges Bay Road from B3 office to R4 residential. This was recommended by the Planning Commission in December, first reading at the Common Council in December, public hearing at Common Council in January, and this matter was tabled, so we have to remove it from the table.
Motion to remove from the table.
We have a motion to remove from the table.
What was the motion?
To remove it from the table.
Well, it'll always be there if you don't remove it from the table and fail to
Second.
take action.
Let's be there forever.
2 years from now, somebody can remove it from the table and
All
pass
right.
it. I mean, the idea is that we're going to let this die because this is not the intent for the property.
So you have a motion and a second. He said second.
You did?
I did.
Okay, motion and a second to remove from the table. Call the roll.
Alderman Strelchuk?
Aye.
Alderman Bushy?
Aye.
Alderman Meyer?
Aye.
Alderman Worth?
Aye.
Alderman Garrell.
Aye.
Alderman Brian Schneider.
Aye.
Alderman Kathleen Schneider.
Aye.
Alderman Nerben.
Aye.
This matter is now before us, so if
Move
we
to
don't-
reject the motion.
move to reject.
Second.
Motion second to reject. Any discussion?
So rejecting would keep it B3 as is being requested by the
Reject the
landowner.
next one, too.
Yeah, there's a couple of these.
Okay.
We'll finally get to what we're looking for, I think.
Reject, reject,
Okay,
reject.
so, call the roll.
Alderman Bushy.
Aye.
Alderman Meyer.
Aye.
Alderman Worth.
Aye.
Alderman Garrell.
Aye.
Alderman Brian Schneider.
Aye.
Alderman Kathleen Schneider.
Aye.
Alderman Nerben.
Aye.
Alderman Strelchuk.
Aye.
8-0, and that's, ordinance is rejected. Ordinance 1537, amending Chapter 58 of the zoning code to rezone the property at 4828 West Donges Bay Road from B3 office, et cetera, to neighborhood commercial.
Make a motion to reject.
Second.
And maintain the
Okay,
B3
motion
zone.
and a second to reject.
That's
Any
what happened.
discussion? Call the roll.
Alderman Meyer.
Aye.
Alderman Worth.
Aye.
Alderman Garrell.
Aye.
Alderman Brian Schneider.
Aye.
Alderman Kathleen Schneider.
Aye.
Alderman Nerben.
Aye.
Alderman Strelchuk.
Aye.
Alderman Bushy.
Aye.
8-0, and that ordinance is rejected. So the property stays B3,
Yes.
is the net result of all of what we did.
Y'all can sleep easy.
I've seen worse ways.
Until we decide to change our minds. Resolutions, Resolution 3599, rejecting the bids for the Mequon Thiensville Community Gateway Project.
Move approval of the resolution to reject the bids.
Second.
Rejecting a lot of stuff here. Motion and a second. Call the roll.
Alderman Worth.
Aye.
Alderman Garrell.
Aye.
Alderman Brian Schneider.
Aye.
Alderman Kathleen Schneider.
Aye.
Alderman Nerben.
Aye.
Alderman Strelchuk.
Aye.
Alderman Bushy.
Aye.
Alderman Meyer.
Aye.
8-0, and that resolution is rejected. Resolution 3588, resolution authorizing a development agreement with Secure Fund LLC for the reconstruction of a shared parking lot on a portion of the city-owned property located at 11333 North Cedarburg Road and 6100 West Mequon Road.
That was recommended.
Recommended by Public Works Committee.
Move approval.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Resolution is adopted. Resolution 3598, approving an amended shared parking and access agreement between the City of Mequon, Secure Fund LLC, and the Howard J. Schrader American Legion Post for the public parking lots at 5900 and 6050 West Mequon Road, and a portion of the city-owned property at 11333 North Cedarburg Road and 6100 West Mequon Road.
Move approval.
Second.
That was 3598. I'm looking at it was approved, but is this the one with the amendment on the?
That's next.
Next one.
Yes. So it was recommended to reserve.
Okay. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. 8-0, that is adopted. Resolution 3589, awarding the Mequon Civic Campus parking lot reconstruction project to Poblaki Paving in the amount of $922,874.
That's the one that was recommended with an amendment by the Public Works. So effectively, on packet page 255, it would be removing in the table the capital parking lot funds and shifting that 132,000 down to TID 3 as whatever portion of the parking lot that is at or below the 922,000 remains from the top two items. I just made that nice and
needs to get
complicated.
added to the resolution somewhere, right? So, I mean, I don't disagree with
Yeah,
you, but
go.
you were in the memo, and I think somewhere you got to stick in a.
I think the net effect of it is to remove paragraph H,
Correct.
Right.
Okay.
Thank you.
So we
and it all works
But
out
don't you need to
magically.
put something in to say where it's coming from?
No.
Well, because the next one
paragraph
just says the TID will
where
pick up the balance.
comes
so
from.
It was craftily worded
Balance comes from the TIF.
by accident, probably.
Do you need a motion?
Yes. Do you have a motion?
No, we don't. We need
I'd make a motion to approve removing item H.
Well, no, you don't need that.
No,
That's
we
okay.
need a motion to approve 3589 as
Recommended.
recommended by the Public Works Committee.
Second.
Yes,
So I can't motion.
She made the motion.
I made the motion,
You did.
Yes.
You second. Okay, motion and a second.
What you said.
as you read it.
Any discussion? Alderman Schneider.
I just wanted to make sure that we're shifting that money to the TID to pick up the balance of that. And I want to make sure that that money that we're not using, that stays going towards parking to repair parking lots.
It's
in the fund, it wouldn't be removed from the fund.
It's in a capital fund for
There'd
parking
be
lot improvements.
We'd have to
so.
take specific
There'd be
action.
another
otherwise.
vote if there was going to be a change in that, and probably require a supermajority, I think, because it would be changing the budget, so there's some protection there.
Yeah, that would be a fund transfer, which would require council approval.
Okay.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second. Call the roll.
Alderman Garrell?
Aye.
Alderman Brian Schneider?
Aye.
Alderman Kathleen Schneider?
Aye.
Alderman Nurbin?
Aye.
Alderman Strelchuk?
Aye.
Alderman Bushy?
Aye.
Alderman Meyer?
Aye.
Alderman Worth?
Aye.
8-0, and that is adopted. Resolution 3590, awarding the sale of $5 million and actually $35,000 in general obligation promissory notes, Series 2019A, providing the form of the notes and levying a tax in connection therewith. Dollar amount is preliminary and subject to change. Recommendation, this was recommended by Finance Personnel Committee tonight. Because of the favorable bids, the actual amount is reduced from $5,085,000 to $5,035,000.
So I'd make a motion to approve at $5,035,000.
Second.
Motion and a second to approve. Any discussion? Call the roll.
Alderman Brian Schneider?
Aye.
Alderman Kathleen Schneider?
Aye.
Alderman Nurbin?
Aye.
Alderman Strelchuk?
Aye.
Alderman Bushy?
Aye.
Alderman Meyer?
Aye.
Alderman Worth? Alderman
said
Garrell.
aye.
Alderman
Aye.
Garrell.
8-0, and that is adopted. Resolution 3591, appointing Dana Investment Advisors Incorporated of Brookfield, Wisconsin, as the City of Mequon's investment advisor for the period March 1st, 2019 through March 31st, 2022. This was recommended by Finance Personnel Committee.
Move to approve.
Second.
Motion and a second to approve. Any discussion? Call
I
the
would just
roll.
make a note that in the future, when we're doing something like this, and the ratings are relatively subjective, I mean, there's at least one or two aldermen who have some knowledge of this industry. It would be good that it wasn't just staff who was doing the analysis. And that, because it's subjective, if it's objective, fine. But I think that at least the offer ought to be made that somebody on the council can participate in that analysis. But
Oh, you had-
I'm in favor of it.
We
But
got 3 members of the Finance Personnel Committee
Reviewed it, but not in-
interviewed the
Oh, you did do the interview?
We were there for the.
Oh.
The final three,
Never mind.
we
I was there
we saw
too.
the final three.
I thought it was just the, I thought, okay,
Yeah, we were all there,
all right. Didn't know.
and anybody was invited.
So we gave him guidance, and he made the ultimate decision.
Okay.
So we have a motion and a second. Call the roll.
Alderman Kathleen Schneider?
Aye.
Alderman Nurbin?
Aye.
Alderman Strelchuk?
Aye.
Alderman Bushy?
Aye.
Alderman Meyer?
Aye.
Alderman Worth?
Aye.
Alderman Garrell?
Aye.
Brought down to three.
Alderman Brian Schneider?
Aye.
It's only after it's brought
8-0,
down.
and that is adopted. Resolution 3576 was already taken up. Resolution 3592, approving the purchase and installation of a replacement plow truck and related components from Truck Country, Oak Creek, Wisconsin, Universal Truck Equipment, Galesville, Wisconsin, and Olson Trailer and Body, Green Bay, Wisconsin, for a total cost of $181,399.
That was recommended 3-0 by Public Works.
Move
Buying
approval.
Wisconsin
Second.
products. Way to go.
Boy, if we vote no against a plow truck today, we're kind of not very smart, are we?
Made the same comment at committee, Rob.
No pressure there, guys.
We have a motion.
I didn't hear a motion. I don't know
Move to
that I heard a
Yeah,
second.
move to
Yeah, we have a
approve.
motion
We
and a
did
second.
it down here and on the
Who was
quiet
the
end.
second?
Brian
Mumblers.
We tied, but give it to Brian.
Any discussion? besides that one.
Sorry.
Call the roll.
Alderman Nurbin.
Aye.
Alderman Strelchuk.
Aye.
Alderman Bushy.
Aye.
Alderman Meyer.
Aye.
Alderman Worth.
Aye.
Alderman Garrow.
Aye.
Alderman Brian Schneider.
Aye.
Alderman Kathleen Schneider.
Aye.
8-0, and that is adopted.
Weeks.
Oh, we have more. Resolution 3593, awarding a contract for the 2019 update to the city's comprehensive park, recreation, and open space plan to Ayers Associates of Madison, Wisconsin, in the amount of $25,100. Recommended by the Park and Open Space Board, and recommendation forthcoming from Public Works.
It was recommended for approval as well, 3-0.
Move approval.
Second.
Motion and a second to approve. Any discussion? Call the roll.
Alderman Strelchuk.
Aye.
Alderman Bushy.
Aye.
Alderman Meyer.
Aye.
Alderman Worth.
Aye.
Alderman Garrow.
Aye.
Alderman Brian Schneider.
Aye.
Alderman Kathleen Schneider.
Aye.
Alderman Nurbin.
Aye.
8-0, and that is adopted. See, we wait long enough, everybody agrees. Resolution 3594, a resolution awarding a contract for replacement of the City Hall boiler to J.F. Ahern, Milwaukee, Wisconsin, in the amount of $29,088. Recommendation forthcoming.
That was recommended for approval as well, 3-0.
Make a motion to approve.
Second.
Motion and a second to approve. Any discussion? Call the roll.
Alderman Bushy.
Aye.
Alderman Meyer.
Aye.
Alderman Worth.
Aye.
Alderman Garrow.
Aye.
Alderman Brian Schneider.
Aye.
Alderman Kathleen Schneider.
Aye.
Alderman Nurbin.
Aye.
Alderman Strelchuk.
Aye.
8-0, and that resolution is adopted. Resolution 3595, awarding the 2019 Cedarburg Road Improvements Design Contract to R.A. Smith, Brookfield, Wisconsin, in the amount of $45,700.
That was also recommended for approval, 3-0. Public Works.
You guys spent a lot of money.
Move approval.
Second.
And any.
Discussion.
Just real brief, I promise.
Okay.
This is in my district. It's very bumpy. I'm really happy to see that this is getting addressed this year. I've had a lot of complaints about it. Wonderful.
All right, motion and a second, and call the roll.
Getting it design
Alderman Meyer.
addressed.
Aye.
Alderman Worth.
Aye.
Alderman Garrow.
Aye.
Alderman Brian Schneider.
Aye.
Alderman Kathleen Schneider.
Aye.
Alderman Nurbin.
Aye.
Alderman Strelchuk.
Aye.
Alderman Bushy.
Aye.
8-0, and that is adopted. Resolution 3596, awarding the Donges Bay Road Improvement Design Contract to North Shore Engineering, Mequon, Wisconsin, in the amount of $10,700.
That was once again recommended for approval, 3-0 for Public Works.
Move approval.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion?
I deleted my.
Call the roll.
Alderman Worth.
Aye.
Alderman Garrow.
Aye.
Alderman Brian Schneider.
Aye.
Alderman Kathleen Schneider.
Aye.
Alderman Nurbin.
Aye.
Alderman Strelchuk.
Aye.
Alderman Bushy.
Aye.
Alderman Meyer.
Aye.
8-0, and that is adopted. Resolution 3597, awarding the County Line Road Box Culvert Design Contract to North Shore Engineering, Mequon, Wisconsin, in the amount of $7,800.
I would like to also comment, besides that, it was recommended for approval 3-0 from Public Works, that thanks to staff and everybody, we made it through in the 45-minute allotted time, all 10 items, and even the work plan. Kudos.
Well done.
Move approval. Make a motion to approve.
Second.
Motion and second to approve. Any discussion? Call the roll.
Alderman Garrow.
Aye.
Alderman Brian Schneider.
Aye.
Alderman Kathleen Schneider.
Aye.
Alderman Nurbin.
Aye.
Alderman Strelchuk.
Aye.
Alderman Bushy.
Aye.
Alderman Meyer.
Aye.
Alderman Worth.
Aye.
8-0, and that is adopted. We have no specified unfinished business, no petitions, memorials, remonstrances, or communications. A potential closed session for personnel evaluations of city administrator and city attorney. Common council may convene into closed session pursuant to Wisconsin statutes 19.85, paren 1, paren C, considering employment, promotion, compensation, or performance evaluation data of any public employee over which the governmental body has jurisdiction or exercises responsibility, and then may reconvene into open session to take such action as deemed appropriate.
Move to go into closed session.
Second.
Second?
Second.
Motion and second to go into closed session. Call the roll.
Alderman Brian Schneider.
Aye.
Alderman Kathleen Schneider.
Aye.
Alderman Nurbin.
Aye.
Alderman Strelchuk.
Aye.
Alderman Bushy.
Aye.
Alderman Meyer.
Aye.
Alderman Worth.
Aye.
Alderman Garrow.
Aye. 8-0, and we will now go into closed session.